Welcome back, everybody. This is going to be part 2 of the U.S. Masters first round matchup casts for 2021. Today, Jeremy will be out on some errands for the first part. He will be joining us later, hopefully. With me today for the first half, again, we have Patrick Zora Allen, Adam Ballard, and Devlin Smith working with me to get the second half of our 32 matchups done. And we're going to dive right back into it. At the end, we will have some more discussion on who we think should be dark horse candidates, who we think are going to be the most interesting matchups, who we think will be drunkest tables, prettiest tables, funnest tables, and any matches that we're particularly interested to see. And then afterwards, I will throw up a poll on Fanatics to start taking count of who we want to watch streamed once we're there. But for now, going straight on into table 17. Jeff Swan versus Kyle. I was just joking earlier that I was just going to mispronounce everybody's name so that it feels like I'm treating everyone equally when I try to butcher it, but I'm just going to say Kyle P for this first one.
You got the Swan versus the Peach.
There we go. Alrighty, let me get Jeff's list up here. And then, no, not that one. Not the work part. And Kyle. All right. I will go ahead and read Kyle's. Pat, if you want to read off Jeff. So for Kyle, we have a horde of Naiad Ensnarers, 2 regiments of Naiad Heart Piercers, 1 regiment of Order of the Brotherhood with the Brew of Strength and upgraded with Pathfinder, so normal knights with Strength and Pathfinder, 2 hordes of Earth Elementals, a horde of Order of the Forsaken with Sir Jesse's Boots of Striding, a horde, 2 Beasts of Natures, both upgraded with Wings, Druid with Banechant, Conjurer's Staff, and Surge, 2 Unicorns, both upgraded with Lightning Bolt 5. As you do.
Be lucky you're only paying 20 points right now.
All right, and then on Jeff's side, we have 2 Warrior Chariots regiments. We have a horde of Boomers, 2 hordes of Hunters or Crocodiles, 2 Berserker Brave regiments, a Mammoth, the Ogre Warlock with Trained Light, 2 Sergeants on Chariots, Kuzlo and Madfall, and Namagrok. For 13 drops and 23 unit strength versus 12 drops and 22 unit strength. Definitely an interesting matchup. It's going to be a lot of dancing around both sides since both of them have some fast, nimble, small base units to play around with. I like Kyle's list. I don't see many Brotherhood players actually take Heart Piercers very often. I think it's interesting that he actually did. And Jeff's list is, it's a Jeff list. He's going to say that it sucks, and kick your ass with it. He's got a lot of nimble shenanigans he can do with those Sergeants and Chariots, and Kuzlo and Madfall. I think it's a second ogre list we've seen him in, and I think he is pretty damn good. And you know how to use them. I think it's going to be a pretty interesting matchup.
The drain life on the Warlock's interesting. It's not usually something you see too often. And Jeff certainly has the regiments he's probably going to clump up in a block to kind of get the additional dice for it. So that's very interesting. But at the same time, he's going to have to want to avoid those ensnarers until he can get enough boomer rounds into him, because otherwise he does not want any of his units to get stuck in that giant ensnare block. I mean, the same can be said. Kyle's got a very defensive list. I mean, the ensnarers, Heart Piercers can shrug off like the plink shooting that Jeff has until, the boomers get close. But hopefully between the boomers and the Berserker Braves, that'll probably be like Kyle's priority targets, get the chaff out of the way and get the shooters out of the way. and he has the speed Kyle does to kind of harass Jeff, but we all know Jeff takes these wacky lists that he thinks aren't, or that he says aren't good, and then he kind of pulls some shit out of his ass and just kind of wins with it. So this will be another one of those really cagey matchups because I don't think Jeff wants to commit as soon as ogres normally like to, just because he's got to be careful of the speed that's on Kyle's side, and then once you kind of get dug in, he's got some of the tankier units to hold up and make life a little bit miserable. So he's going to have to pick and choose. It'll probably be on how he uses those sergeants, can get them into good positions to get flanked with those nimble chariots.
I think Jeff is essentially playing his Trident Realms as ogres in style. You have the 3 sergeants, or the 2 sergeants in Kuzlo as knuckers, and the hunters replacing Death Hearts a little bit. So I expect to see quite a bit of dancing around and not committing until he has to.
Yeah, I think both players are going to play pretty passively to get advantage where they can. But Jeff's probably one of the best scenario players around. And I think that's why he can take the lists that he says aren't good and still produce with them. It's not an accident that he won Lone Wolf recently with a very similar ogre army, if not the exact same one. And he had a pretty good showing at Bug Eater with it as well. But Kyle has a lot of he has more speed, he has a lot more heavy hitters, those hammers. He can pop some stuff on the turn that he charges, and he can buy his time because those heart piercers I think outrange the lightning bolt that Jeff's going to be putting out. And since he bought the lightning bolt on the unicorns, he actually has heal 10, Kyle does. So the long range shooting that Jeff has isn't going to be enough, I think, to take out anything on Kyle's side.
I think there's a very large misconception by people that this is a bad ogre list. I think this is a shockingly good ogre list when you understand the concepts of height and how it works. And basically how Jeff bunches his units is very efficient. It's definitely it's not a like you look at it and you're like, I understand how this works at first glance. You do have to see it on the table, but if you see it played, it makes perfect sense, and it is a shockingly good ogre list in my opinion. But I will say that with the speed of Kyle's list, that definitely gives him a pretty good, little bit more flying edge, a little bit more flanky edge. The lightning bolts are going to have difficulty with Hex, I think, more anything else, because he's got to choose to either move them in position or he's going to self-damage the unit. And that's if he stands still to shoot, so that gives Jeff a little bit more control over cover. But ensnared hunters are just a brick to get through. And not everything, I mean, a lot of the stuff here does have Pathfinder and at least one term of striding, which will definitely help. Oh, well, almost all of it has Pathfinder. I take that back.
Yeah.
It'll be a little bit easier, but I don't see anything with quite the high volume that I'd want to see to pop those hunters in one charge. He's going to have to get doubles, and if Jeff positions correctly, that won't happen. But we'll see. I think it's a close matchup.
And one thing to point out, those unicorns aren't on wings, so they're going to be able to hide a lot easier from the Hex. That's like their only benefit. I would prefer them on wings personally, just for those objectives at the end of the game. But
I will take a minute for anyone who didn't know this list Jeff's running is effectively what I believe Jesse was supposed to be running this year, or something along those lines. So this was Jeff taking ogres in honor of Jesse. There we go. But yeah, with all that said, what do you guys think? Matt?
I've seen Jeff find his way out of the paper bag plenty of times, but I've also seen him completely throw games because his dice forget to work. So I'm just going to go with the Homer vote. I think it's going to be close, but I'm going to go with the Homer vote and vote Jeff.
All right. Devlin?
I've also seen Jeff lose game one and then go on to win the tournament with quite regularity. So I think what it's ultimately going to come down to is Kyle has a lot of shooting that Jeff doesn't have early answers to. Now, granted, Jeff's not going to put things that are valuable out. It's going to be the Berserker Braves. It's going to be like a Chariot unit or so. But I think Kyle can plink off enough units in the opening turns to where either Kyle making a commitment or Jeff has to make a commitment kind of happens earlier than they want. And I think Kyle can probably squeeze it out just based on the shooting he has. So I'm gonna throw it over to Kyle in this one.
Seems fair. Adam?
I think I'm also going to give it to Kyle. He's used to playing against Trident Realms, and as Pat says, this is a fairly similar lineup to what a Trident Realms player would be having anyway. He's not going to fall for the ensnare trap. He knows what it does. Yeah, I think he has the tools to handle this in pretty much all the phases. So, going Kyle.
Yeah, I would normally go with Kyle if I didn't know Jeff's capabilities of pulling stuff just out of a bag. And again, I've seen this list and how it plays, and it is deceptively good, and has a lot of tricks for getting the charges it wants, even against this faster Brotherhood list. I think it will be very close, but I would give Jeff the smallest of edges here, probably just on not knowing Kyle well enough, is what I'll say. All right. Let's move on to table 18. We have
Isn't House Nick also Dojo? Is this a Dojo on Dojo matchup?
Oh, coming up here? Yes, we have Nick Michelonis, who's murking. I have to check which region he's murking for,
Pacific
but
Northwest.
versus... There you go. So yeah, Nick is murking for the Pacific Northwest versus Stephen Hausnick for the South. Adam, if you want to read Nick's list.
Sure.
And Devlin, if you want to get Hausnick here in just a second.
Can do.
So Nick is playing some Night Stalkers. He has 2 regiments of Reapers, 2 regiments of Needlefangs, 1 horde of Butchers, 2 planar apparitions, 2 Fiends with J-Boots and Caterpillar, 2 Shadow Hulks, and 1 Void Lurker. 12 units, 22 unit strength. Nice and easy.
All right, and Hausnick is running his Ratkin, which he's taken to the last 2 or 3 tournaments I've seen, and he's been doing pretty well with them. He has Goblin allies, and we'll get to that in a second. But he starts off with a regiment and 2 hordes of just vanilla warriors, 3 troops of claw shots, as you're required to bring, a regiment of tunnel runners with the Brew of Sharpness, because that's the only way they come, 3 weapon teams, a mutant rat fiend, a brood mother with the blight staff, and that's the only add-on. Mother Kryza with Blood Boil, Scud the Bud, and then for his goblin allies, he has a horde of rabble, because why not more trash, a war trombone, and a bang it, because why not have 60 points of just busted shattering. He clocks in at 17 units and 20 unit strength.
Dojo Off is going to be interesting. Nick does play against rats. He plays as rats, rather. These 2 opponents are very familiar with each other. So I feel like they could probably tell you exactly who's going to win, most likely. Stealthy, I think, will come in and play for the claw shots and the flight staff, especially since Nick has the plane apparition. But once he gets close enough, those weapons teams, there's enough volume of fire that Steven is going to be able to pick up units regardless of stealthy or anything, unless it's stealthy and cover. Steven also has just enough drops to be able to absorb a lot of losses, since you can't overrun through weapon scenes or anything like that. So each one is going to be a hard stop. Nick doesn't have like too many individual type killers. Really, his Void Lurker is going to be the only one doing that. That being said, there really isn't that much beef to House Nick's list. It's mostly, he's got the 3 hordes of defense 4 dudes, the regiment and the tunnel runners, and everything else. The Raffine is beefy, and then he's got a dragon, But everything else is on the smaller side and lower nerve side, especially if those Racken hordes end up dropping and he loses his rallying. And Nick definitely has the amount of attack to get through that beef very quickly between the Fiends and the Reapers.
Is House Nick from the Dallas area, or is he down there by Super Beast in Houston-ish?
Super Beast. I think they play
Okay.
pretty regularly.
Okay. It's only like 4 hours away, right?
He makes a pilgrimage to Austin with Dustin every once in a while.
Got it. Cool. Yeah, it's going to be really how the first couple turns go. Just does House Nick get enough of the wounds to stick, or does the stealth actually hurt him pretty bad? Because if you don't kind of fracture up his opponents before they get to the lines, as Pat eloquently put, it's just trash with 2 or 3 monsters to kind of just clean up what's in there. Especially if Nick, now that I look at it, he doesn't have any lightning bolt, because I was going to say my goal would be to pick on the tunnel runners, because that's the main thing you're looking to punch through. Sure, the mutant rat fiend can probably grind for 8 years, but the tunnel runners are really the only thing I'm scared of. From a combat perspective, Scud the Bud is great, but he's not going to chew through hordes of stuff that quickly. But yeah, it'll kind of come down to terrain, and if House Nick can at least get some good shots in those first couple turns. If he has to deal with terrain as well as the stealthy, it's going to be an uphill climb, because Nick's going to hit his lines and then not really be able to do too terribly much.
I actually think this rat list is somewhat deceptive. I think it does what these goblin armies are doing just a little bit better, because you allied in. It's not the long range shooting that you have to worry about, it's the close range shooting. Those weapons teams plus a bang it plus a war trombone, he's putting out 40 shots, and then the grenades with the shattering on top of it. And then he decided to take Mother Kryza with blood boils. So he's just going to say, even with stealthy, he can pick 1 unit for sure, kill it once they're close enough, and possibly even 2 units. And Mother Kryza is really, I think, the living legend of the Rats army. Scuds is whatever. He's pretty pricey, but Mother Kryza, I think, is what wins the Rats games. So, no, I think this Rat army is, even against stealthy, I think it's going to just shred some things.
Yeah, the Goblin comment was literally what I was going to open up with. I was like, I think this is a Goblin list that is wearing masks, because effectively the only difference is you're replacing your long-range artillery with long-range claw shots, which I'd argue are better, because they score and they're more accurate and more consistent in most cases. but yeah, no, I think you get baited into trying to get rid of the warriors and the tunnel runners and scuds, and then you just sure maybe you kill them, but I think he just doesn't care. I think he just keeps shooting you. It's the goblin spitter strategy of, oh, you killed a regiment, cool, here's another 80 bullets to your face. Oh, you killed another regiment, here's another 80 bullets to your face, until you're just dead. And while I do think Nick has the right tools to break through the warrior meat shield fast enough, I just don't think that he survives the 3 rounds of shooting that it will probably take before he actually gets to the shots. And Steven probably won't have much, big things left on the table. He won't have any hordes or anything, but he'll have enough scoring units left to just win the objectives and call it a day. It's pretty nifty list. Pat, you want to start us off on our votes there?
I think I'm going to go with Nick. He knows how to play against rats. He knows how to play with rats. He knows how to play against a bunch of folk in shooting. I mistakenly thought that House Nick was in the DFW area, but Nick has played against Aaron Chapman's 3 Decimator Horde list plenty of times. This one has more sources of fire, but it has a similar way you would approach it. So I think on scenario, Steven is going to run into lack of scoring units.
Devlin?
Yeah, now that you guys kind of talked me over to it, I've opened my eyes. I think Nick will keep it close, and because Nick has the heal, especially to survive the claw shots in kind of close ranks. But yeah, I mean, it's the same situation where Steven's just going to disengage after a combat and then just allow all the shooting just to kind of rein in. You only need a little bit to see the Reapers, and then you can kind of light them up real easily. And then anything else is big enough to shoot over. So I think that he'll do the disengage shimmy and then get lit up kind of one by one. And eventually it'll go over to Steven. So I think that's how it's going to play out.
In your Adam?
I think I'm going to give it to Steven. I know that he's one of the guys that practices against Dustin Howard all the time. And I know Dustin plays a mean Night Stalker list himself. So I have a feeling that Steve's a little bit practiced against Night Stalkers and knows what his army's limits are there. So I'm going to give it to the Rats.
Yeah, I like Nick a lot. He's a fantastic guy. Super dry humor, but it's my style. But yeah, if this list had just a little bit more like some lightning bolt or some long range counter battery to pick off these like the claw shots are fairly easy to pick up. The weapon teams they're defense 5, so they're harder to pick up now, but like they're still lower nerve as long as they're not getting super rallied all the time. Like you could maybe pick these up. That would give him an edge, but without that, I think Hausnick has a very strong advantage here, even against the stealthy. So I have to give it to him. All right. Moving on to table 19.
Yeah, somebody put it in the chat here, but they said Steven actually beat Dustin at Lone Wolf with his rats. So
I believe it. And Steven came in what, like best general, I think?
No, he was
second best general.
Yeah, he might have either been
as general in battle, but I'm not 100% on that.
Yeah, I think he and I were either tied for best general, or I was 1 point ahead of him at the end. So it was close.
Devlin, I'm going to give the honor of reading a second time here, just because. Hey, look, it's you.
Me?
It's you. And another sigh of relief in the comments as Aaron's Berenger list, which admittedly is very similar to Billy's, is going to be a fun matchup. Though you do have Spearman, you do have Felix. So Aaron here is rocking Berenger. He has 3 Lords on Frostfang, 1 with the Pipes of Terror, all of them with Snow Foxes, as you do. Some Frostfang Cavalry with the Brew of Sharpness, 2 Mounted Sons of Korgan with Potion of the Caterpillar and Striding, all stealthy, I assume. Yes, stealthy. 2 Hordes of Fallen. Nothing on them, just naked, but they're super good that way anyway. 2 regiments of Foxes and 3 regiments of Draugr. He's got 13 units and 26 unit strengths, and I think everything scores. Yes, everything scores.
All right. I just want you to know that I have received about 4 IMs asking if I will be okay. I think I'll survive, but it'll be rough. I'm some shit poster from the Southeast who qualified as 8th in region because half the region couldn't show up to tournaments because of COVID. So I'm just going to hear and take, one of the better players. But, I've got 2 regiments of spearmen because, as Adam and I have sung their praises, they're the most cost-effective roadblock in the game, in my opinion. I've got a regiment of mummies because they don't ever die unless you want them to die. 2 regiments of skeleton archer cavalry. You read that right. They actually melee better than they shoot, but they are defense 3 and die to a stiff breeze. 2 desert swarms, affectionately known as the Chads, because they survive stupid things every single game that they're in for no explainable reason whatsoever. 2 hordes of enslaved guardians. One of them I put Pipes of Terror on. The other one I put the Wine of Elvenkind to make them nimble. A horde of enslaved guardian archers with Blessing of the Gods, because who doesn't want to eat when you shoot and you punch? And then the requisite 4 living legends, the Monolith, the Soul Snare, the Shobik, and Sebi Ray. Clocks in at 25 unit strength and 14 drops. So before y'all get into this, I'm going to tell a funny anecdote to the chat. So I have a clubmate who I asked to play against me in one of the lists for Masters, just picking randomly at a draw. And because he has a Berenger army, this was the easiest army he could put together. So before knowing the matchups, which I figured out yesterday, I on Saturday actually played against this list. And might I say, I beat it. However, I will put 4 caveats there. I didn't play against Aaron. My opponent rolled like 4 times, 1 below nerve. And, I ran out of reasons to kind of give myself hope in the middle of that sentence. But, I think I've got a good shot at this, but I'll leave everybody else to dissect me into millions of pieces.
Well, Devlin, I had the pleasure of playing Aaron at Lone Wolf, and as you know, our lists are fairly similar. I have a couple more enslaved guardians, and then I had a couple bone giants, but a lot of the core of the army is the same with the 4 living legends, mummies, skeleton spearmen, and then a couple pieces of chaff. It was a pretty tough game, and I got pretty lucky with some of my shooting. One of the things that he has changed since then is he's put stealthy on his mounted sons. He was running brutal originally. So sorry about that, Devlin. And
so I have you to thank for that. Yeah, that's gross.
And I have a feeling that after playing against especially the 4 living legends that Empire Dusk can put out, that Aaron definitely has analyzed that matchup and likely practiced against it. So you may have gotten practice, but I bet he's gotten some practice too, Devlin. So you have the tools to beat this army, though. It all comes down to just scenario.
Yeah, agree there.
Pray it's not push. Pray it's not push.
I think I just put it all on the monolith and just boot scoot behind the rest of my units at that point.
I think you could win push. It
The
definitely
biggest
be
problem with
hard.
push is I think you definitely want to castle up with your list versus his. And then push, that would allow Aaron to throw it on a drow regiment on one flank or the other. Walk across uncontested. Push makes you spread out a lot more than most people would want to.
Yeah. Push,
Yeah.
loot, any sort of loot tokens is scenarios just extra tough for an all shambling army, basically. So
I mean, I think you could blitz it, but you've got to effectively at that point you're pushing Aaron to fight you in the middle of the table, and Aaron will. The downside of that is you can't anchor up on a building, so it does depend. But I think invade still is the worst scenario for you, as it is for every EOD in my opinion. But I will say that Aaron's list is strong. But you do have a lot of good tools to handle elements of it. He can't keep the foxes just out in the open to try to chaff you up because you've got more than enough shooting to pick up the chaff. While he does have stealthy on the Mount Suns, there's plenty of other things that you can shoot. So the Guardian Archers will have targets, and they do damage. And if he loses enough stuff before the lines meet, then Slave Guardians are no joke. They'll hurt. And Shobek takes quite a bit to usually remove, or some double charges with a lot of these things. And Skeletal Spearmen are suspiciously just an excellent hard counter to most of the stuff in this list that isn't the Fallen. Like, it's going to hit the skeletons, you're going to watch it turn into just not enough attacks to actually blow through a -15 regiment, which is hilarious. I absolutely agree. They're one of the best foot units in EOD.
The only thing that one shot his skeleton spears is probably Frostbangs.
I think
Does
he
they
has
have sharpness?
Frostbanes.
nah,
They do have sharpness.
sharp. Yeah, I was gonna say without that it's a 50-50. With the sharpness, you got them on like 4s twice on average.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm not too worried about the stealthy and the Sons of Corgan because, like Matt said, there's plenty of other targets. Honestly, I've aimed for Frostbangs in general, whether it's a Lord or the Horde. It's going to be interesting though because the Slave Guardians, and it's like designed to kill Defense 5, Route 17 units, and Mounted Suns are designed to kill Defense 5, Route 17 units.
Yeah.
So between that, it's whoever can pick up each other's hammers first. And Lords and Frostbangs are dangerous enough all around, but you do have a decent number of answers for that, like your Soul Snare, combined with the Archer Cav and your Guardian Archers. Like, that's enough shooting to be able to pick up a Defense 5 that Route 17 target in probably 2 turns.
Yeah. So, Pat, who are you thinking?
I'm mainly thinking Aaron because I've seen Devlin's dice before, and I do think that Devlin's dice has to not do what Devlin's dice has done every time I've been in a room with him. I won't be in a room that weekend, so maybe it's a me thing if your dice are generally fine.
It's funny you say that because my dice have been on a colossal hot streak lately. So I'm just waiting for game 1 of Masters when they just go ice cold, and I just drown myself in a bottle of whiskey. So regardless of how this game ends, I'm going to get turned.
Adam, what are you thinking?
It's tough. I'm thinking Devlin wants this to go into a grind, and he wants to. Things just got to hit and got to stick. If that happens, I think Devlin's going to win, but I think Aaron's probably learned quite a bit and knows how to handle this type of army with his Varinger. So I'm actually going to give a nod to Aaron. I think he's going to come prepared for this one.
Yeah, it is hard for me to vote against Aaron. I will say that this list can beat Aaron's list, absolutely. But I will say check your angles, check your angles, check your angles, and then if you can force the bad engage or I mean he gets to pick the fights. I will say you have a nice advantage in the Desert Swarms because he doesn't have any way to remove those outside of punching them, as far as I can see. So that gives you a slight edge there. You actually have two really good chaff pieces in that. But yeah, I think it will be closer than some people will expect, but I probably give Aaron the slightest edge. Berenger just hit like freaking trucks. All right.
All I gotta say in my defense is that I've beat Jake Pikachu like 80,000 times at Kings of War, and if he can beat Aaron by the transitive property, I can beat Aaron. And it's my third time playing him, so third time's a charm. So I've got that going in my favor as well. So I'm picking me.
One of those ones where like under the table, like I'm giving you the nice like get him.
Mm-hmm.
So
but
yeah,
I'm rooting for you, Devlin. I'm just putting my money against you.
That's fair. I'll make it back for myself.
There you go. Alrighty, moving on to table 20. We've got Grant Fetter versus Keith Conroy.
Alpha on alpha?
Yeah. Let's see. Let's get Pat.
I'll read Grant's.
Gotcha. So Pat, read Keith. Adam, start us off.
All right. Grant's Flyboys. He's got some Basilians. He's got some fast Basilians. 2 troops of Gur Panthers. That is 4 regiments of Alohi with 3 hordes of Alohi. One of those hordes has Healing Brew. Another one has the J-Boots. Samacris, Julius, and Tullivar. He has 12 drops, 21 unit strength.
He's facing off against the herd. He's got a horde of Spirit Walkers, 3 troops of Harpies, 2 hordes of Lycan, one with Dwarven Ale, one with Chalice of Wrath, a regiment of Forest Ramblers, 3 Beasts of Natures, Bear Fly, and 7 Pack. He's got 2 Druids, one with Conjure Staff enchanted on the mount, the other one with Trap Snake enchanted in the mount, and Moonfang. It's 13 drops, 19 unit strength versus 12 drops, 21 unit strength. I feel like this is kind of what Keith doesn't want to see, because what Herd normally does is outspeed everybody, and he's facing against somebody who outspeeds him or matches him. It's interesting. Like neither one of these guys, they're both relying a lot on Bane Chant, because I'm seeing this bunch of Crush 1 across the board, except for their characters. So if somebody can take the Bane Chant out of it, or deal with each other's Bane Chant effectively, I think that person is going to win, especially if Grant can take care of Keith's Bane Chant quickly. Because then Grant can just tank all of that Crushing 1, TC1 that Keith has.
Yeah, but I don't think there's a way that he can actually get to the Bane Chants. Those Druids are going to be just hiding. And Keith has plenty of range threat to prevent Grant from coming down a flank and targeting him on 2 fronts. I have a feeling that neither of these casters are actually going to get caught out.
I'm gonna make the statement that I don't think either of these players rely on Banechan. I think they rely on flanks. Like with that kind of speed, they're just running circles around people.
Yeah,
The
the number of units that have speed is kind of like what you said yesterday, Pat.
Right.
Two dragons is better because you can focus on two different fronts with it. Well, these guys took it to the next extreme and said, well, what if I take 3 hordes of Alohi and charge it all down each flank?
Yeah, and 2 hordes of Lycans and the Moonfang on the other side of it with 3 beasts of nature as well. There's just so much threat in these lists. These lists aren't. I don't even know if I would call these alpha strikes so much as just threat lists. Like this deserves its own category of just it is nothing but speed. Like even alpha, I would consider you're going for like that 1-turn charge hit smash, and like it doesn't matter if it's the face or the flank. You're just trying to hit something and it dies in one go. These aren't looking for face smashes. They are definitely looking for flanks. Because Grant stuff can grind a little bit because LOE are good at that. Defense 5, fearless, iron resolve, dash across the board. You know, he can grind out and pick his fights usually against most lists with that kind of speed. Certainly with the 4 regiments of LOE. On Keith's side, I mean, it's clearly the same concept. He's got the 3 harpies as like, get in here, fight these things while I run circles around you, and you can't move to actually counter that. And then with the height of the Lycans, he can probably do some nimble shenanigans and catch people off with funky corkscrews. And I mean, this is gonna be a fun match to watch. I'm putting this on my list.
Yeah.
I may be late to the party.
Quick.
I may be late to the party, but I just now realized what Tolliver actually does, which is 18-inch Bastion, which can immediately cast 18-inch Banechant behind it. That's dumb.
Yep.
That is 150 points of dumb.
It is. So is perfect for this list.
Yeah, so there's a Alohi go to dash 15 for the regiments, or 18, self-inspiring, just gross, and you've got Iron Resolve. Honestly, like, I can almost say that Grant can just about face tank this list and just eventually grind through because his defense is a lot better. I know that's not what he wants to do, but I think in a pinch, if he has to mix it up, he's not afraid to, just by the nature of how BS his list is. But, you know, this is not a list that Keith wants to see at all.
Then he'll just face take everything. And I do think he has enough of those Elohi regiments that's going to be hard to hide, where he can just, Grant can get enough angles to charge each of the druids, or at least one of them, and charge whatever else he wants with the hordes of Elohi. Then he's just going to be sitting pretty, beating on things as things get stuck.
Yeah. The thing that I think that is actually in Keith's favor, though, is that his speed is all nimble, whereas those Alohi, they don't have that nimble anymore. They might have the flying, but and then also Keith's stuff is all Pathfinder. So, you know, it could be turned around the opposite, where if Keith says, you know, moves up into terrain and says, all right, you can charge me, but you're going to be -1 to hit and give you all front charges. He can nimble, get some stuff around the wave that charges in as well. So I think Keith's able to utilize the terrain a lot better than Grant's army would be, which I think gives him a huge advantage in this matchup.
Yeah, I'll start us off on voting on this one. I think that Grant just has it's not a huge difference in speed, but it's just the slight fact. I mean, it's everything is speed 10. It's the smallest of differences, but I think he gets to pick the fights over Keith in most cases. Like Keith, obviously you can always try to deploy around that and position things to make unfavorable charges. But I think Grant picks the fights. He does kind of an alpha grind where like he throws the regiments into things that won't be able to get around the regiments, but also won't be able to punch through the regiments. And then he's got Samarkris with heal, Radiance of Life, Iron Resolve. Like this list is suspiciously tanky, and I think it just grinds him down. It doesn't even have to really alpha. It just hits and then sticks and won't go away. And then it slowly will pick Keith apart. But it could definitely go either way. A couple bad charges, couple spiked rolls. Keith starts sweeping it. It's going to be a super cagey match, and then the second the lines meet, it's just going to be like over in a second. What about you, Pat?
I think I'm going to go with Grant. Keith's list is designed to outmaneuver and outspeed, and he is a little bit more maneuverable than Grant, but he lost a lot of the speed advantage, and Grant has enough units with speed that he can cover any the flanks and thread into flanks. So I don't think Keith is going to really be able to get around him. And then once they get stuck in to defense 5 and Iron Resolve and Fearless, I think we'll win out. And then, Julius is defense 6, and Keith doesn't really have an answer for that at all. The closest thing would be Moonfang plus Lycan Horde, and even that, I think it takes several turns to grind it down.
Yeah, he's going to require flanks and whatnot to get Julius, but I think Julius is kind of like Shobik for Basilians. You either commit and kill him, or you just ignore him and you let him do what he's going to do. I just saw Grant even mention they've never played each other, which I find surprising because both of these guys are UB degenerates. Like, I feel like every day I see Grant posting 2300 anyone starting in an hour. And I know Keith loves his play-by-email games. I'm going to spice it up. I think this one's kind of a coin flip, so I'm going to actually go with Keith just to contradict both of you.
Way to steal my thunder. I was going to be the sneaky one who's going to go for Keith. I think that Grant's not going to want to engage with the hordes early, so he's going to throw his Elohi out as feelers, and I think that's actually where the Harpies may come in clutch, because Grant has no long-range shooting to deal with them, so he can kind of screen behind the first wave and kind of buy him time to deal with those Elohi regiments and set himself up for the long grind afterwards, especially if, as we mentioned, if Keith can get into some woods and use that as an anchor to take some of these charges. I think he can kind of grind it out in his favor, as weird as that sounds against Elohi. But yeah, I'm a throw it over to Keith because I don't know, I like Keith.
Sure. So we have a draw on that one. Chat, if you want to throw your opinions in there as loudly as possible to tell me who you actually think should win it, since we don't have a tiebreaker. But we're going to go ahead and set up to start doing round 21, which is going to be Brad McKay versus Mark Taylor. A good spread of EOD this event.
I think this is the last EOD. It's just the three of us.
Yep, only 3.
Yes, I'm sorry, y'all.
I was hoping for 4, the 4 living legends of EOD.
Yeah, I would have brought RevKev if I was attending, because I still think that's better than my rats. But alas, we have Mark Taylor here.
4 living legends or Apophis?
No, the only 4 living legends that anybody should ever take in EOD. That's what I was referring to.
Yeah, Matt's a little weird. Sometimes he brings Apophis, though.
I always bring Apophis. But in any case, let's see. We had, I will read off Brad's list. Devlin, if you want to read off Mark's list here. So Brad is bringing Northern Alliance. I have a sneaking suspicion this is going to look similar to Dustin's here already. So he's got 2 regiments of Snow Foxes, 6 hordes of Ice Elementals, 2 hordes of Frostbane Cavalry, 2 Lords on Frostfang, 1 with Mace of Crushing, 1 with Blade of Slashing, but no Foxes. 2 Ice Queens. No Fox upgrade.
Fox upgrade, sorry.
Yeah. 2 Ice Queens, 1 with Heal 5, replacing with Surge, as you do. 1 with Heal 5 with Shroud of the Saint, and also replacing Surge, as you do. Coming out to 12 units and 22 unit strength. Nice and compact.
Editor's note, that's only 4 hordes of ice elementals. I think you saw the 6 for the horde and said 6 again. But yeah, just 4 hordes. But that's small time. Mark is bringing out his EOD once again. He's got 2 regiments of mummies to start it off, both with spicy caskets that Matt is going to damn in about a second. He's then got not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 turkey vultures, the scavenger unit. His punch comes from 2 hordes of enslaved guardians. 1 has Healing Brew, 1 has Han's Sanguinary Scripture, 2 Bone Gigantes. I hope 1 is named Mr. Bone Jangles, and the other one is Chiquita Bonana. He's got the 4 requisite Living Legends, as you do, in the Monolith, the Soul Snare, the Showbiz, and Sebi Ray. He clocks in at 14 units, but only 20 unit strength. So, Matt, start us off with a rant about caskets, just to get it out of the way.
Oh, did Mark take caskets? He did take caskets.
And the mummies.
Yep.
If there was going to be someone who I believe could make caskets work, it's probably Mark. But I know Mark and I have probably talked to this point to death between just us, let alone all the other EOD players. And that's that. I don't like them. They're gambly. But he does have a lot of things to try to negate the gamble to a degree. So like you could do some tricks with these scavengers. I could see one of the things that I always tell people is that if you're going to use Surge as like a push instead of a engagement tool, so like most people look at Surge and like the only thing you do with it is you do 1-inch pushes, and I usually agree with that philosophy. However, there are times when you can push the unit forward a little bit just to get a little bit of board positioning, and usually you do that by bumping up your own units. So like you position a unit so that when you Surge you don't overshoot by accident and cause all the problems. So with these scavengers, potentially just as a movement tool alone, he could position scavengers and then super shoot the mummies forward into a new position, using the scavengers to basically force the mummies to stop where he needs them to and get some board presence. That's me just spitballing here because otherwise I think they're garbage. But they do give him some sneaky, occasionally big surges.
I think it's those 20 points where he felt like he'd rather have the threat of them / see if they can work rather than buying 20 points of something else. So with that and a Healing Brew, he had 25 points, which I guess could have been Pathfinder, and at that point I didn't want to play Guardians instead of Healing Brew.
Yeah.
But otherwise, he doesn't have much to really upgrade him on, Like, he doesn't have heroes to throw Blade of Slashing on. Mummies usually don't require an item anyway.
Sure.
Yeah, 5-point item on a mummy unit's all right, but otherwise, just kind of leave them how they are. I would have liked to see some terrain mitigation on one of the enslaved guardian units, whether it be Strider or Pathfinder.
Yeah.
Just because that I feel like it almost always is useful.
I'd rather see one of these caskets and the Healing Brew on this other unit converted into Iron Resolve instead. Just me. Yeah, but ultimately maybe he's got a plan. I'm going to assume he's got a plan.
I know he does. Now, Mark and I talk a lot about Empire Dust as well, and I will say I'm surprised that he only took 4 scavengers, because in a couple lists that he showed me, there was like 4 regiments and 3 hordes of scavengers, and it was just like, okay, what? play test it. Tell me how it worked, because I can't theory craft that.
Yeah, it is a lot of scavengers, and I'm not a super fan of them. One or two for scoring, I get.
Oh.
I like them, but I like my multiple troops of things, and they're tall enough to block line of sight to his guardians, like a shooting list, and they're beefy enough that you need a decent amount of lightning bolt to take them off.
Yeah. And in a Empire Dust list, which comes with the 4 living legends they're going to keep them alive pretty easily between the heal, the drain life, everything like that. So those scavs, an 11-13 defense 4, you got to pick it up in one turn. Otherwise, it's probably back to full health the next turn.
Yeah, and with 4 of them, you can literally just pick one unit and be like, you're not going to play this game, really.
Yeah. And in this matchup, they're going to be great because he has 4 scavs, 1 for each of the ice elemental hordes.
I think the key to this matchup is going to be taking out the if you get to the ice queens to prevent the shoot and surge, that's going to be key. And for Brad, it's going to be locking down all those surgible 50mm monsters.
With 4 scavs, that job is a lot easier for Empire Dust now. So.
Yeah, I think my only concern for Mark's side is that once the scavs are gone, you normally want those mummies in a normal list to stick around 2-3 turns through a combat until help can arrive. But with the shoot and scoot that these ice elemental lists have, it's not likely to happen for those mummies. So I think that's going to be a pain point that he'll have to try to work around, is to kind of mitigate those shots in, because the things he normally relies on, those mummies, the bone giants that he can usually say are going to last 2 turns of combat against a dedicated combat unit, aren't going to, because of the surge. So that'll definitely be something he has to look out for, because they can pop that bone giant in a turn if they get lucky. And that's just preventing the threat of doing that like ping pong maneuver where you just start corkscrewing into random things with surge on those bone giants, which is where he gets a lot of the value in this list, is once you get stuck in how you can use those 50mm monsters. So it'll be interesting to see, but Mark does have the chaff tools. The thing I'm kind of worried about is getting actually chaffed up himself, because his only shooting's coming from the soul snare. Granted, they can shoot off the snow foxes, but he's got to get a good roll in a turn, and there's 2 units he's got to do it against. So that might be a little tricky for him, is trying to deal with Brad's chaff coming back at him.
I imagine the snow foxes are going to be hiding behind that ice wall until Brad actually needs him. So that is going to be a tall order to actually shoot him off.
They could be, but if they start out behind and then Mark chaffs him up with the scavengers, then the snow foxes are going to be stuck behind.
Yeah, that is true.
Yeah, so I'll start us off on our voting here. I think Mark's list definitely has the tools to disable Brad's. I think it really depends on how much Brad has been playing the last year. I never want to call him rusty, because he is a fantastic player. But I don't know how many games he's been getting in or what he's been playing with recently.
He played at Lone Wolf with almost the same list. I think he had 3 ice elemental hordes, 3 frostfang calves hordes.
Gotcha. I'd probably give Mark, I'll give it to you just on the audacity for taking Caskets of Damned. So show me what you can do with them.
See, and I'm going to go the opposite. You took the Caskets of the Damned, so I lost all faith in you. I'm going with Brad.
Mr. Pat?
I feel like this is a true toss-up. It's going to be a game that's going to be close until it isn't. I do think it's going to snowball one way or the other around turns 3 or 4, but it's going to be a tightly fought, very technical game until then. Both these players play very tight games. They both know their shit as far as angles and surges. So I think it's going to be rare for either one of them to catch each other out. this is much slower list than I'm used to seeing Brad taking, and I know Mark has played Empire Best for a long time, so just based off experience with the army, I'm going to give it to Mark.
And Devin?
I think I too am going to give it to Mark. I think really what it's going to come down to is that I don't even know what I'm talking about anymore. I'm just giving it to Mark because I want to be an EOD Hummer. Let's just go with that.
It's always a safe bet. Alrighty. Well, moving on to our. Sorry, I just saw that chat, Devlin. Moving on to table 22, Corey Reynolds versus John Green. Let's get Pat reading Corey's and Adam reading John Green's here in a second.
All right, Corey has Racket. He's going to do a. Let's wait until Matt brings it up so y'all can follow along.
But as fast as I can. Should have had it ready to switch. My bad. There we go.
A horde of warriors, 2 hordes of shock troops. Both the shock troops have plague pods. One has fire oil. 3 troops of claw shots. 3 weapon teams. 2 mutant wrath fiends. A brood mother, Mother Kryza, Scud the Bud for 14 drops and 19 unit strength.
One of those has phalanx, the shock troops.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, the one without fire oil has phalanx.
And John Green's Abyssal Army, or should I say Succubi Army? He has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 regiments of Succubi, all with the Lurker upgrade for Pathfinder. He's got a Hammer of Measured Force, a Brew of Strength, a Fire Oil, a Chant of Hate, a Blessing of the Gods, a J Boots, and 2 Nakeds. 3 Seductresses, 2 Abyssal Warlocks, both with Bane Chant, and Matu Busu.
What's Terrible Majesty? Let's pretend that I know all the special characters in this game and all of
Is
the
that D3 Brutal?
The
Brutal,
D3 Brutal.
Yeah,
He didn't even need to have a name for that. They just could have done Brutal in parentheses D3. Come on, guys.
I mean, Terrible Majesty is a really good special rule name, though.
Oh, man. You're not wrong, though.
I mean, and it fits the Dami Mommy theme of the Succubi, so I'm all for it.
Yeah.
If it's not a giant vampire lady, I'm going to be super disappointed, John.
All right, so I really do like Corey's list. It's a pretty aggressive rat list. Mutant rat feeds are great. You're going to have a good rally bubble. But this is not, John's list is a skew list, and his skew is specifically to kill trash.
This is the best skew John could have run into.
He can kill trash very well.
And Corey, I mean, his isn't a trash list because he's got shock troops. But to John's Succubi, they might as well be trash.
Defense 4, it's all trash.
Yeah, it's exactly what this runs to run
this
into.
Is going to be a very uphill battle for Corey, I believe. He's going to have stealthy again with his weapons team and claw shots. Mm-hmm. And his 3 hordes. The 3 hordes and the mutant wrath fiends are. These Succubi just look at them, like licking their lips. The Succubi don't want to run against defense 6 spam, but they do want to run against a bunch of defense 4 targets.
Yeah, even the mutant rat fiends are like, it's all defense 4.
Yeah. And there's
and
two
four characters
backing it up.
The 4 speedy characters to shut down any shooting or brood mothers, or even Scud.
Yeah, and Scuds doesn't want to see all these seductresses and ensnare, because that's one of his only weaknesses, is not hitting on 3s with his 13 attacks.
Yeah, 6 or 7 hits feels bad.
Yep.
Yeah, but think of it this way: even double charges into a plague potted unit is only doing what 10 wounds. So, if granted, John won't be stupid enough, I hope, to charge before he's dealt with the weapons teams, because otherwise, that's kind of the play there. But yeah, it's you hold them for a turn, and then you go, okay, now what? And then John goes, okay, I attack again. Goodbye, and repeat that 3 times ad nauseum until things just start going away.
I
Well,
don't even know that Plague Pod saves him. He can get three regiments into one horde.
right.
It'll save him against a double charge, but not against a triple.
Yeah. And realistically, he's going to block off a triple charge. Yeah. And I'm wondering how Corey's going to run his weapons teams, because you can't really run them up front or between the units because there's 3 or 4 flying individuals running around.
And
then,
the warlocks can shoot him too.
Right, that too. And then if you run them behind the lines, then they're only ever going to be able to shoot something once the shock troops or warriors actually die in front of them. So at that point, like, John's okay with sacrificing one of his units after he's killed one of those hordes. So those, I feel like those weapons teams aren't really going to get much use outside of maybe playing defense in the backfield from the characters trying to jump over. But all of John's stuff besides the warlocks are going to be height 2, and you're not going to be able to see them over top of anything.
Yeah, this was the correct rat list for John to pull, basically, is what it looks like. The one with the least amount of shooting.
Well,
I'd say the least. It still has 3 troops of claw shots and three weapon teams.
And John's entire army is stealthy outside of the warlocks too. So.
Yep.
Which, I mean, for the claw shots, the warlocks are actually great targets. So.
Yep. It is worth noting that, yeah, the Bane Chant, without Bane Chant, these guys are, it's still 4s, so it'll be 3s and 4s with 20 attacks. So it's not actually as terrifying as it looks at that point. With the Bane Chant behind it, suddenly these are going to be shredded things.
And I think it's scary because the number of dice plays a factor. It's kind of like the goblin shooting. It's not good shooting necessarily, but you throw enough dice, you're eventually going to spike a roll on one turn, and you're going to pick up things that on average you maybe shouldn't have. But you put 2 of these regiments into one horde, 40 attacks could turn into 17, 18 wounds pretty easily, and then you're looking at an average roll to pick them up.
Yeah, I think my biggest issue with Corey's list is he can't fight back into it. None of his stuff really wants to fight into the ensnare that the succubi are bringing. Like, even if, say, he can bounce a couple charges, I just don't think that Corey's list has the right combination of punch to get back in unless he can consistently get flanks. But John's going to checkerboard those succubi across the map, so it's like you're not going to get to the juicy center where the action's going. So, yeah, it's Corey can do it. Corey's a very, very good player, but John's going to have to come, shit-faced out of his mind game 1 if Corey wants to have a standing chance, I think.
Yeah. Well, I'll start it off. I'm gonna go with John on this one. The skew list pays off round 1.
I'll go with John as well. I think this is what his list was designed to destroy.
I'm just happy that I don't have to be sober by the time like game 3 I run into John again, so hopefully I won't be as blackout drunk this time when he tables me. But yeah, I think I got to go with John, and I do not envy whichever sad soul named Devlin Smith that Corey ends up beating the crap out of game 2.
Yeah, it's always one of those, like, if the shooting spikes hard enough, maybe, but I think with the stealthy and just the sheer number of regiments and the sheer amount of nerve and the sheer volume of attacks following it up, like, yeah, these the succubi are effectively just negating hit power by existing, and that helps compensate for the low defense. So I do think that I think Corey can win it, but I definitely give a pretty massive edge to John just overall. This is the best thing he wants to see across the table. Defense 4 or lower for almost everything. Hitting on 4s or lower for almost everything coming back. It's going to be a rough uphill battle for Corey, I think. All right. Moving right along. Going to table 23. Got Hank Gouge versus Ryan Mansell. Probably the prettiest table in the room.
And we're not just talking about them, those beards.
Oh, yes. It's 23. And Ryan. Also going to be a very fun table. Both these men are gentlemen.
Nobody else was up to this point, right?
Oh, yeah, no. Everyone else just jerks the lot of them. None of them ever would win a sports game.
Table 19 was a bunch of fucking degenerates.
Yep. All right. I'll go ahead and read off Hank's list here. Let's have Devlin, if you want to read off Ryan's. I believe it's back to us too.
My pleasure.
So we've got Hank. He is also taking Varinger. He's got 3 regiments of Draugr. He's got 2 Snow Troll hordes, one with Dwarven Ale, one with Chalice of Wrath, like you do with trolls. He's got some mounted Sons of Korgan, one with the Brew of Haste and Stealthy. Tundra Wolves with Potion of the Caterpillar, a fantastic unit. 2 Jabberwocks, both with ranged attacks for Vicious and Steady Aim. A Magus with the Boomstick and Drain Life. A Lord on Frostfang with Blade of Slashy Slash. Lord on Chimera with the Trickster's Wand. And a Snow Troll Prime. Coming in at 13 drops and 23 unit strength.
Snow Troll Prime, that is spicy. All right. Ryan is using his salamanders as he is wont to do. So he starts it off with a regiment of ancients, because who doesn't love D6 inspiring? Dash 17. He's got a horde of ceremonial guard with Brew of Strength. 2 hordes of tyrants, one with Meat of Madness that'll have a minimum charge of, or a maximum charge of 16 inches there. And the other one's got Potion of the Caterpillar. A regiment of Rhino Cav for the thickest of thick chaff at dash 15. 3 Lyclodons for his shooting needs. A Phoenix for heals. A Clan Lord on a Raptor. And Firebrand. Then he rounds it off with Dirty Elf Allies, because he apparently has no shame. With a Drakon Horde and a Lord on Drakon. I liked the list until the elves. Then it just got gross.
Yeah, Ryan's list is very well rounded here. Got some shooting, got some punch you in the face tyrants, super tanky center with phalanx no less. Some heal to back it up. It's very well rounded. And then speed. Hank, on the other hand, has some nimbly shenanigans and some tough center himself with the Snow Trolls. Region 5, Crush 2, Vicious, Wild Charge. They're faster than they appear. I don't think I've seen the Jabberwock in a long time. Let's see here. Brutal, Crush 1, Feeding Frenzy, which I assume is they get more attacks when they're wounded. Or more attacks for the wounds on the other thing.
Yep.
Okay, gotcha.
Melee Blood Boil.
Sure, cool, nifty. Nimble Strider, Thunder Charge 1, and then they shoot stuff. I assume they don't get Feeding Frenzy for the range attacks. That would be pretty nuts.
No.
Okay.
It is a nice combo of Drain Life, though.
7 attacks, damage already on the unit attacking in melee.
I think I would have preferred that the Magus had a mount instead of the Boomstick, just to keep up with them a little easier. I love the Lord on Chimera with Trickster Spawn. It doesn't really come into play in this matchup, other than the Phoenix. But I feel like this is two balanced lists going at it, which this should be a pretty close game.
Phoenix losing a teal will help.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think my concern is that Ryan really doesn't have much in the way of conventional chaff. Sure, he's got the Lyclodons that he can kind of throw out there, and the Rhino Cav.
The Lyclodons are his conventional chaff.
Yep.
You just walk the salamander way of things is you walk forward six inches at a time, and you can't charge past the Lyclodons. Like, there's no way a Simeon guard will be able to get multi-charged with 3 of those Lyclodons out there.
Got it. So you kind of funnel it in.
Yeah. Usually you place them roughly 12 inches apart, and it's pretty hard to get past them easily.
Yeah, I just think it'll be interesting how, because looking at Hank really only has the Magus for range. Or, he only has the Magus for range, which 7 shots is something, but it's not enough. It'll take 2 turns and maybe he'll pull one off with good dice. But yeah. And honestly, after the first turn, if you're shooting the Lyclodon, he just heals it up, Radiance of Life with the Phoenix, so... Yeah, because I was going to say, in a straight-up fight, I think Hank wins it, but it's kind of interesting because, they both have these 3 chaff units aside with Hank's Strother, although the Strother, the placement will be a little weird because they're a lot slower than, say, the Lyclodons are to stay out in front. They might just be objective seekers in the long run.
Going to be a bloodbath, I think, one way or the other. So I don't think those Lyclodons will stand up for super long. Like, they'll inevitably be removed. And I think Ryan has the speed edge to a degree anyway. Like, there are 2 units. Well, they're about even on speed, if anything. There's a couple of fast units for Hank. There's a couple of fast units for Ryan. Ryan does have a little bit better on the wild charge with the Tyrants, potentially. I think Ryan has a tiny speed edge,
but them Dracons.
Yeah. I'm not discounting the Dracons by any means.
And I love the regiment of Rhinosaur Cav.
This is going to be an interesting one. I'm also adding this one to my list, I think.
Also, don't forget the Clan Lord can gotta be thrown at his chaff in a pinch if he needs to. That thing's decently tanky. It's speed 8 and 13-15.
What are you thinking, Pat?
I'm thinking I think it's gonna be a close game, and I think it's a toss-up. So because of that, with experience, Ryan's played the game longer, and it's been to several masters. So I'm gonna go with Ryan. I'll go against my clubmate.
Senior Adam?
I'm also going to go with Ryan. He's been playing Salamanders way too long to lose round 1 of Masters.
So what was my excuse? Because I played EOD for like 20 years.
He's a good player, Devlin.
That's fair. It hurts, but it's fair and truthful. We don't like those here. I, too, am going to go with Ryan. Although part of me, for throwing elves in it, doesn't want to vote for him, I will vote because he probably just wanted to use his Scorch Wings as a unit that can actually do something, so that's why he's got Dragons.
He didn't take shooting elves, so that's got to count for something.
Yeah, I guess.
I mean, the Dragon allies are like barely below taking shooting elves.
Yeah, I wanna vote with my clubmate so badly, but I do think Ryan has the smallest of edges with a little bit more speed on his side to beat the cage, so to speak. But I think it will be pretty close, and I think there will be a lot of dead stuff by the end of the game. And it will be a super fun game. Ryan is a super fun opponent. Was best game 4 ever. But yeah, moving on to table 24. We have John Carter versus R.G. Allen. John up here. And then Pat and Adam, if you want to read off their lists respectively.
Sure, I'll take John's. So this is John Carter. Tom, it's not John Becker. A lot of people thought John Becker was coming to Masters. But no, this is a different John from the Midwest. So John Carter has Undead. He has 3 regiments of zombies. He has a regiment of wraiths with Brew of Haste. He has 2 troops of Revenant Cav. He has 2 hordes of werewolves, one with Blessing of the Gods, the other with Sharpness. He has 2 hordes of zombie trolls, 2 gore blights, Revenant King with the Loot, Mounted, and Surge 5. He has a Necromancer with Sacred Horn, Aura Vicious for zombies, Mounted. Nope, never mind. Aura Vicious and Bane Chant. And then he has a Standard Bearer with the Tome of Darkness. Running out 15 units, 25 unit strength.
He's facing against R.G. Allen. Night Stalkers. Comes with 2 hordes of Scarecrows, a horde of Butchers of Mean Madness, a Mindscreech, a Planar Apparition, a horde of Fiends with Sir Jesse's Boots of Dragon, a regiment of Soul Flayers, a Terror, a Shadowhawk, 2 Dread Fiends, a Void Lurker, and a Horror with the Vicious Aura for infantry, and he has Bane Chant instead of Lightning Bolts. 13 drops, 21 unit strength.
Is that the first time we've seen that horror?
It's the first time we've seen the Vicious Horror.
Yeah.
And
with no Reapers.
Yeah. With 2 regiments of Scarecrows, which is interesting. I mean, it definitely helps the Scarecrows actually be dangerous.
Sure.
Like they're sneaky good with the Vicious and the Bane Chant.
Yeah.
On the flip side, we've got an undead list that doesn't have Soul Reapers in it.
Blasphemy.
Yeah, I think that's the first mistake.
I disagree.
I think he makes up for it by taking zombie trolls with the Vicious Aura, which is a low-key MVP unit that Soul Reapers and White have overshadowed.
I am right there with you, Pat. As soon as the Soul Reavers and Whites get that Nerf hammer, which I don't even think they really need, but that'll allow the zombie trolls to shine. So,
oh, don't get me wrong. I think zombie trolls are fantastic, and there's definitely a list out there waiting for them. I just don't think it includes 2 hordes of werewolves with it.
Why not?
I think
they could be zombie
werewolves
trolls
are good. I really wish he had strength instead of sharpness under 1, though.
Quote unquote mathematically the same.
I've played this list of John against John right before COVID hit last year, and he has a really good eye for objectives. I beat the tar out of him dice wise, but he still managed to sneak a draw with good placement of his units. So one thing you got to watch out for is basically when those center lines kind of clash or when he kind of gets stuck in. Those gore blights with the 2 of them kind of spaced out to just kind of plink wounds on your army and then kind of keeping them back to where they're double charging with the zombie trolls, but then kind of backing up and not letting themselves get exposed. It's something to deal with. And they're still shambling 50 mil monsters, even if they are inferior bone giants when it comes to combat. They're still pretty good just putting wounds by just existing. So that's one thing you got to watch out for. And I don't think it's something that, when you spread the wounds around too much like that, it's more than the Planner Apparition can do much with. So that's something to really watch for.
Yeah. Cloak of Death is very, very good. One of my favorite abilities, and why a Pappy is actually good. But
Gorblights do it for what? Only half the points?
Yeah, exactly. Smaller base size, but not a huge deal when you're paying almost nothing for them, and they're basically they're like a mini zombie troll regiment if you actually look at their stats. Like, they're very similar. You just get a D6 plus 6 instead of 18.
Defensively, but not as offensive, but it's trade off small regiment.
And it's not even that much lower on the offense.
And it's still 15 points cheaper than Apophis.
Yep. For 2 of them. Yeah. They that Cloak of Death is money, because it's going to be -1 effectively on every combat, every turn. Even if he heals it off, like, it's just at the start of the combat, subtract 1 from the nerve. It's brutal for every combat nearby. But it's better because you then have to dedicate healing resources towards it, and I don't think, as Devlin said, there's just not enough here to keep up. It's gonna eventually catch up with him.
Off topic, but what do you guys think if they change Necromancers to have inspiring zombie only?
I think Necromancers are too good as is.
Maybe 10 points more inspiring zombie only then?
Yeah.
Anyway.
I want cheap casters in my list.
Exactly.
Right. Priorities.
So, just another thing of why Necromancer is so good. Like, that undead standard bear really should just be a Necromancer with Inspiring Talisman.
Yes.
Because you would net 1 extra surge from it.
Yep. Just literally no purpose.
Actually.
That is absolutely true.
Yeah, for the exact same points, and the only difference is you're 10-12 instead of -11, which for an individual doesn't matter.
Yep.
Yeah. I like, these are both different styles from the Night Stalkers and Undead we've seen. At least definitely for the Undead side. But even, the Night Stalkers doesn't have doesn't have Reapers, has Scarecrows instead.
It has a little bit of everything, which is...
Yeah, it's just kind of all over the place, which isn't bad.
But the thing is, it still feels cohesive. Like, instead of 2 Shadowhawks, he has a Terran Shadowhawk. And,
yep.
Like, instead of, like, a bunch of Fiend regiments, he added the Soul Flayers and the Fiend Horde. It still feels like a cohesive list. So I do like the list design in that he brought a variety of things without feeling like a mismatched hodgepodge of an army. And similar on John's list, he's got a very solid center with the zombies and the zombie trolls and gore blights. Those Wraiths and Revenant Cav are going to be really annoying. Speed 8 Wraiths is a really good anvil. There's a couple things that I've nitpicked about John's list, but I do really like it. It's got tools for a lot of different things. I guess I'll start voting off. I think they're both great lists. I'm not super familiar with how good of a player each of these guys are, so just based on lists, I do think Undead has the edge.
Yeah, I'm right there too. I think from the sounds of it, John's pretty proficient with his Undead, and he's been playing something similar for a long time. I know he's out of the Ohio group in the Midwest, and I do know that those guys have quite a few strong players too. So I think he's gotten a lot of practice recently as well. And something that I don't think we talked about much at all, but those werewolf units are scary with the Blessing of Gods and the Bruise Sharpness. Those things are going to, he's got a strong center in the zombie trolls, gore blights, Revcav, Wraith, but then those werewolves can outspeed pretty much everything on the other side of the table and get where they want to get. So I think I'm going to give it to John on this one.
Yeah, I think I'm going to go with John as well. Adam brought up a good point, but to take it a little bit further, werewolves really don't like defense 5. And what does RG only have one of? One defense 5 unit. So I think those werewolves are going to be able to kind of get where they want because they've got the speed and will just be able to kind of chew through things. They won't have as much danger of getting stuck, especially if he double charges. And he'll just kind of be able to whittle through things just one by one while that center just kind of holds up. And even if he's not doing wounds with his combat units, or with his anchor units, he's still plinking consistent wounds from those gore blights, and it's just going to add up until he finally sweeps the leg.
Yeah, gonna give it to John. I just can't figure out what the goal of this Night Stalker list is. I think that's my issue. It's not that it's necessarily bad, but I don't know what the plan is. It just seems kind of haphazard. Like with Adam's EOD, for instance, there's a lot of one of everything's, but I know what the plan is. Like I can see the plan and the strategy. With this list, you got scarecrows being buffed up by a horror and dread fiends, I guess. But like then you just kind of got random monsters and random other units, and it's just a whole lot of stuff. So if there is a plan, cool, awesome, I'm be happy to see it. But I think I can see the plan in John's list. I can see how it works and what he's trying to do with it. And I like it a little bit better. So I give it to John. Alrighty. Moving on to our next table. 125. We have here Felix Castro versus Patrick Justice. I will take Felix if Devlin, you want to take Patrick.
Can do.
We're 25, Patrick. All right, so for Felix Castro, hailing from the Pacific Northwest, we've got 2 dwarf clansmen in a Northern Alliance list. 2 regiments of Huskarls. I should say those are troops of dwarf clansmen, 2 troops of dwarf clansmen, 2 regiments of Huskarls, 2 regiments of snow foxes, 2 hordes of snow trolls, one with Chalice of Wrath, one with Dwarven Ale, like you do. 2 cavern dwellers, a Thane with Inspiring Talisman and the Rally Standard, 2 lords on Frostfangs with the Trickster's Wand, Snowfox, and Blade of Slashing and Snowfox, respectively, and an Ice Blade with the Wings of Honey Maze. That's an interesting choice.
Ooh, it's spicy.
Coming out to 14 unit strength and 20 unit strength and 14 drops.
All right, and Patrick Justice is another boy out of the Southeast. He's rocking Abyssal Dwarves for this one. He's got 2 regiments of Immortal Guard with the Throwing Mastiffs. He's got a troop of Gargoyles. He's got 1, 2, 3 Lesser Obsidian Golems. All 3 of them have the Charnox upgrade. 1 has Aegis of the Elohi. 1 has Blessing of the Gods. 1 has Piercing Arrow. Ooh, a Hellfane with both aura upgrades, Brutal and Wild Charge. An Overmaster with the Aura Strider. An Ironcaster with Bane Chant and Surge 8. And he allies in some Night Stalkers to get 2 hordes of Scarecrows for meat and a Shadow Hulk. He's only got 12 drops, but it rocks out to 24 unit strength.
I like both of these lists a lot. The Hellfane, I don't think you ever take the Hellfane without the aura, even if you have no infantry, because giving it Wild Charge 2 makes it pretty scary.
Well, it's Wild Charge 2 to infantry only.
But he gets it himself as well.
Really?
Yep. Whatever carries the aura gets the benefit himself, regardless of what the aura is or the qualifier is.
I did not know that.
Yeah, So speed 7, and I might have just spoiled it for a couple people. I will say when I dropped the Hellbane, I did get a charge off because somebody's not like you that he didn't gain himself. Yeah, a 14-inch charge range on a Hellbane, and all of a sudden it's a lot scarier of a unit. And that brutal aura, he doesn't really take advantage of that as much on a Mortal Guard, in my opinion, but it's still, it can still be relevant. It's kind of like a conditional better dread. And then City and Golems are just solid. This is a pretty solid Abyssal Dwarf list that I'm happy doesn't do the War Machine spam. The Frostfang list is interesting. It's a lot more of the Viking-esque one rather than the Frostbound one. You have the Huskarls and Snow Trolls, the Cavern Dweller. The Iceblade is really fun to play with. Having a 23-inch threat range on a pretty hitty character is pretty good.
Yeah, would have liked to seen the points to give him the Snow Fox up into 7 attacks, but squeezing at that point.
I think I would have even dropped when the Snow Fox had to play the Slashing Frostfang Lord to give it to the Iceblade.
Yeah, or you could drop the Trickster's Wand down to a 5-point item, and that would have gotten it there as well.
Yeah. So I know Felix well enough, but I don't know Patrick. What bugs me, and it's the same thing with these auras and just not having really a lot of things to take advantage of it. You got 2 regiments of Immortal Guard for effectively triple aura because you're taking, and I guess the Overmaster too, sure, but you've got Strider, Wild Charge, and Brutal for 3 units. Which I guess if you look at the total points spent is acceptable, right? Because you're spending what? This is 25, and it comes with the aura here for the Hellfang, but you have to buy the Hellfang. Which isn't
45 points for those auras. The Overmaster I don't like in this dwarf list. I don't think he takes advantage of that at all. The Hellfang I like, and the Hellfang I think that aura. I mean, just look at it as it's Wild Charge 2 and Inspiring Talisman for 25 points. That's a pretty good deal. Even if you have no infantry in the list, I would buy it on the Hellfang.
I'd almost like to see these Night Stalkers just be 2 big hordes of I don't remember the name of them off the top of my head, but Black Souls and maybe some whatever the leftover points from the Shadow Hulk for the conversion becomes maybe a 3rd horde or something. Just to really take advantage of that if you're going to push it.
Yeah, I think if you had if those scarecrows were a horde of Black Souls with Blessing of the Gods and swap for 2-handers, that is you essentially have 2nd edition shock troops then.
Yeah.
That have Strider. And in that case, I think the Overmaster is worth it. But without doing that, I don't like the Overmaster.
So I saw a comment from Keith saying filling out a painted army. So it looks like maybe model options may have restricted Patrick's army.
Sure.
And the ally choices especially. But I agree. I think that especially the Shadow Hulk, I don't think really fits because you have the Hellfang, which would do the same job that the Shadow Hulk would want to do in a lot of instances. So upgrade, dropping all the allies there, that's good 500 points. You could easily fit 2 hordes of infantry and another troop of gargoyles or something like that.
Or regiments or troops. I mean, the troops of Black Souls are good too. Defensive chaff that you can launch out there with all this extra Wild Charge and Strider.
It's true.
There's some. I don't think it's a bad list overall. I just think it's there's definitely some things that could be more optimized with it.
Agreed.
And then on the flip side, we have a Northern Alliance player taking dwarves. So we want to talk about optimization.
Yeah. 0 ice elementals, the way Northern Alliance is meant to be played, right?
Yeah.
I do like the dwarves. 75 points for defense 5, 10, 12 fury. Chaff is pretty good. I would have preferred them with two-handers as follow-up units than frontliner chaff, but
He's got a
it's a slow list, so he does need his chaff.
Yeah, but they can also be boosted to 11, 13 with that rally bubble from the Thane, so they're a little bit on the thick side. So that's it's not too bad. Although if you have them kind of out, yeah, go ahead.
I was saying with Fury, you're not going to block you on charges. What were you going to say?
That, but you do kind of block yourself unless you're marching every turn because you are still speed 4.
Yes.
Yep. But only,
you definitely have to set up to march every turn for them.
Yeah. Yeah, those doors do not want to be in terrain.
So Patrick has a lot of defense 6, but I don't think Felix really cares.
Yeah.
Felix has a ton of crushing strength. He doesn't have a Bane Chant in the army because he doesn't need it. Cavern Dwellers, both Lords, are Crush 3 with plenty of attacks to back it up. Huskarls and Snow Trolls are Crush 2, with the Vicious on the Trolls. This army puts out some damage when it hits. Those Immortal Guard are going to just evaporate in one turn, most likely, and a double charge on Obsidian Golems is likely going to see them go away too.
I think the concern, though, might be that if the Scarecrows are screening, even if they're taking cover, there's a sneaky little bit of shots that are coming from the Abyssal Dwarves between the Throwing Mastiffs, the Charnox, and the Hellthane that can do a little bit of a damage to the Trolls or the Huskarls before they can kind of get to the second line, which is where they really want to be. So I think there's that little aspect you have to be a little worried about. But yeah, you're right. Once Felix kind of does hit the juicy targets, he's not going to have as much problems as a normal army would be cutting those open.
Yep.
I think those little shooting pieces you mentioned are probably going to be better served to clear the chaff that Felix has versus targeting the main core of the army. If you can get rid of a Snow Fox unit or a Dwarf Clansman troop before you engage in combat, I think that's your ideal situation.
Well, cool. Pat, what do you think?
Based off of just lists, I think I'm going to give the edge to Northern Alliance. I think they're both good lists, but I think the Northern Alliance has less wasted points, and I do think that the Overmaster is essentially just wasted points for the most part.
Fair assessment, Devlin.
I think Felix has the tools to deal with Patrick, but Felix also can be prone to some terrible, terrible fucking dice rolls. So I think knowing the two guys who are going to be duking it out on this table, I'm going to give the edge to Patrick in this matchup.
I'm going to give it out to Felix just on the sheer amount of crushing and volume of attacks. I think if it comes down to busting some Obsidian Golems up, those are the right units to do it with. Not to mention just two nimble Lords on Frostfangs doing what they will do. So give him a slight edge there. Adam, you want to finish it?
Yeah, I think I'm going to give it to Felix as well. I think the Trickster's Wand is also going to be a key factor in this one too, to shut down that potential surge option. or allow it to go through, but you have to pay the price for it. So I think Felix has pretty much every tool he wants in his toolbox to verse this.
Fun times. Well, I'm going to go ahead and us on to table 16 here. We've got Greg Pearson versus Nick Murray. Murray. It's Murray.
Murray.
Dang it! All right.
For 15 cents a
So,
day,
Greg-
you can buy Matt hooked on phonics, and he too one day can be able to read good and do other stuff good as well.
You know, I'm just going to start mispronouncing. So it's Greg Pearson versus Nick Murray. There we go. Now everyone's name has been butchered. Let's move on. I've got Pat and Adam, if you want to read their lists respectively. With Jarvis.
All right. So Pearson is bringing Ogres of the Moonlit Hut. He's got 2 hordes of Red Goblin Sharpsticks, 4 troops of Red Goblin Scouts, 2 regiments of Boomers, 2 hordes of Hunters with Crocodiles. One has Helm Confidence, the other has Staying Stone. He's got Siege Breakers of Chalice of Wrath, 2 Goblin Blasters. And he's got an Ogre Warlord with a 2-handed weapon and a Crocodile, so he's Crushing Strength 3 but only defense 4. Got Kuzlo and Madball and Malmagrok. 16 units, 28 unit strength. And it's an Ogre list with a lot of goblins, which I'm kind of digging.
Yeah. And then Nick has good undead. He's taken Jarvis. He has 3 regiments of zombies. He has a horde of revenants with the Aegis of the Elohai. 2 regiments of soul reavers with Chalice of Wrath and Dwarven Ale. 2 death packs. 2 hordes of whites. Vampire on Undead Pegasus with Blade of Slashing and Surge 4. And a Revenant King on Flying Worm with Brew of Sharpness, totaling up to 13 units, 26 unit strength.
I'm going to open up here and just immediately criticize Nick for taking Undead with Jarvis, but not taking any allies with it.
And Jarvis
like
is good without allies.
Oh, yeah, no, he's fantastic, but, go all the way.
I mean, is he though? When you have necromancers,
he's a very souped up necromancer, sir. You get your 18-inch surges, your 30-inch lightning bolts, your 30-inch heals if you ever somehow need those, and your 18-inch bane chance. I mean, he's effectively a foot character that gets a lot of the advantages of just not being mounted because he's short, but can walk around and still cast with plenty of range to reach the entire army, and then gets very inspiring just for fun.
I do like the very inspiring. I'm just thinking,
Yeah.
you can get 2 necromancers for his price and cast. Yeah. Just personal preference, like you said. If you weren't
Sure.
going to take the allies, then I would have liked to see the double necromancer over the top. It's not like you're hurting for.
I would agree with that.
Unlocks.
Yeah, if you're taking him, you should be taking advantage of the fact that you're good. Get something in there.
Yeah, get good with Jarvis. But Nick is playing the Masters of the Far, Far Future in 20,201, according to his list. Scroll all the way to the top, Matt.
Oh.
I don't know if he's going to live that long, guys. I'm just going to go out on a limb.
If he does, he deserves to win Masters.
There you go. He'll be the only one who remembers what Kings of War is.
He will be Jarvis at that point.
Looking at the actual list here, I don't want to say that there's not a lot to talk about, but like these do feel. I mean, the goblin. There's a lot more goblins in the ogre list, and there's some boomer regiments, which is kind of nifty from what I'm used to seeing. Like you got some sharpstick hordes, which is cool because you got phalanx in that. It's definitely that part's a little different, and then the rest of it seems to fill out as what I would expect to see for ogres. You've got your two super good characters. You've got an assortment of hunters, siege breakers, and some blasters for good measure. And on the undead side, you have two hordes of wights and two regiments of soul reavers, and then other stuff. Like the death packs are an interesting chaff choice.
Greg is going to have to be very careful about putting the chaff war, because he definitely has the amount of chaff to win that war, but definitely want to win it because two regiments of soul reavers and two hordes of wights is you want to be able to get first hits on those guys if you can.
Yeah, Pat's right. It's going to be using the chaff where the chaff needs to be used. Don't throw it away to tie up some revenants or something like that, or deal with the death packs. Save it for when those wights are bearing down on you, and kind of screen that way. Because there is a lot of chaff. There's a 3-drop advantage. Is that what it is for Greg? We know Greg's a great player.
16 drops total.
I think the one thing to also look out for is the recurring theme. Has there been an ogre and or goblin list that hasn't taken Cuzlo and Madfall? I think they've all had it. But
they've certainly all taken Nom.
Yeah. I think they've all taken Cuzlo as well. But that's the other thing to look at is...
There might be one that didn't. I don't know if Tyler Schultz did.
Yeah, I mean, if you look at if you get Cuzlo in any combat with an ogre,
brutal unit, those soul reaver infantry start to sweat if they're 13, 15. Yeah, that's exactly what the point I was bringing up. I think that's and if he can Greg can funnel the charges to where the hunters are only taking one of any of those units and not two, then they can kind of stand up and allow him to kind of do his dirty work that needs to be done. So I'm leaning towards Greg because I think Greg can play the long game because there's really no shooting on either side, really, except for plink lightning bolts here and there. So I think with that said, Greg can dictate the matchups a lot better, and he's a little bit faster across the board. So I think he can kind of position to where he wants to and then kind of funnel in those undead into fights they really don't want to take. The dragon will kind of be the wild card to see if it can threaten enough, but it can also might just be, it also has to deal with, the red goblin scouts kind of blocking off flanks and things like that to kind of prevent those that kind of wrap around I think he's looking for.
Yeah. I think that Greg, this is a really good matchup for Greg in general, because he is one of the few people that I've seen taking goblin hordes of spearmen, and it's paying off dividends in this matchup. Because those white hordes are flying. They're going to get affected by it. The vampire on Undead Pegasus, the Revenant King on Worm. So realistically, the only units that are going to be able to handle these sharp sticks reliably are going to be the Soul Reaver infantry, but you don't want to use Soul Reaver infantry to take out the goblins that are essentially just a big chaff wall. Because the revenants and the zombies, they're just going to be too slow. They can't get to the goblins and keep up with the rest of the line. So I think Greg's going to be able to utilize those sharp sticks to hold a center line, and you have to likely commit to kill that, and you're going to commit heavily, and he's got some valuable goblin blasters behind it, along with, a handful of punchy ogre units too. and the Red Goblin Scouts are going to be able to prevent the flanks and getting around the army. So I don't really see how Nick's going to be able to poke a hole in this army and exploit the hole.
Yeah. It is rare that I would vote against undead that are running 2 Soul Reaver infantry and 2 White Horns, because that's just a super solid center right there, right? And it's just one of the best 4 hammer compositions you can get in this entire game. But I think the rest, this is one of the few times where I would jokingly say that normally you just take whatever you want, but the everything else in this list, this undead list, the regiments of zombies, the horde of revenants, the death packs, which aren't bad by any means. They're definitely an interesting chaff piece. But I don't think these are the correct chaff pieces to support these 4 units. I think he needs a little bit more either speed or blocking power, because like these zombies and these death packs, they don't outfight these red goblin sharpsticks. They'll actually die to those, and then you're right, he's forced to engage with the units that are supposed to basically be delivered to the important things, and instead are going to have to kill the things to get to the important stuff, and then the countercharge picks them up. So yeah, I think there's a very good ogre list here.
I think one thing or one tool that Nick's missing is the wraiths. I think a unit or 2 of defense 6 wraiths could have been put in front of those sharp sticks, and if they were supported with inspiring and a little bit of heal and whatnot, I think that they would be able to keep those sharp sticks there the entire game and allow you to get around them.
Yep, I think that's the call. We all get our votes in. Did I miss Devlin?
No, I'm going for Greg as well.
Gotcha.
Chat's really upset we didn't read any of the names of Greg's units, but they clearly all read them.
I'm going with Papa Moonshine.
We're not going to humor them this time.
Papa Moonshine, baby.
You have the Crescent King's conscripts, the Crescent King's retinue, the heralds of the waning crescent, the heralds of the waning gibbous, heralds of the waning crescent, of the waxing crescent, heralds of the waxing gibbous, sentinels of the sacred spore, sentinels of the sacred spore again, they're just the same custom name, order of the wicked sickle, order of the fearless foragers, the shroom-fueled lunatics, the Crescent King's mushroom soup, the Crescent King's mushroom soup 2, Papa Moonshine, and he didn't name these 2.
That's Kuzlo and Madfall.
Yeah, they're just Kuzlo and Madfall, apparently.
And that's Namagrok.
Yeah, apparently they didn't get custom names, though. They're not a renamed one.
Okay. You don't get custom names for Living Legends.
I do. Okay. Moving on with table 27 here. Let's see. We have Nathan Clevenger versus Thomas Strother.
Do we do a quick vote on that? I voted for ogres.
Yes, I believe we landslided it for the ogres in that one.
Okay.
So then you did get my vote. I actually think the undead's got it.
Oh, you do think the undead's got it? I'll give you a second to do that, to chat on that one.
Yeah, I mean, I think the undead's got it. Like, if Greg can win the chaff war, he can pick it up. But if he loses some chaff pieces without getting a good trade for it, then I think the undead can win it out. The Great Flying Worm, he's just a very good budget dragon. The Vampire Undead Pegasus is going to be money in the those 2 flyers are going to put a lot of pressure on ogres, and Deathpack, I would actually prefer them as chaff or soul reavers because they don't block line of sight, and they're nimble. So even if they get wavered, you can back up and then turn, and if you positioned right, you can still get in.
Cool.
Yeah, I think I'd give the edge to the undead.
3-1 vote there. Not quite a slide. All right. Moving on to we have Nathan Clevenger versus Thomas Struther, as we said. I will go ahead and take Nathan's if, Devlin, you want to take Thomas.
Okay.
So for Nathan, we have some Night Stalkers. We have a regiment of Scarecrows with the Warbow of Kaba, a legion of Bloodworms with the Hammer of Measured Force, 2 regiments of Reapers with Blessing of the Gods and Brew of Strength, respectively, 3 troops of Phantoms, a regiment of Shadowhounds with the Brew of Sharpness, 2 hordes of Butchers with Striding and Caterpillar, respectively, Mind Screech, a Planner Apparition, and a Horror, with the aura of Vicious for Infantry. Coming out to 13 units and 27 unit strength.
All right. Thomas is playing Abyssal Dwarves with Agra allies. So he starts it off with the Slave Orcs, a horde of them, 2 troops of Gargoyles, 2 regiments with half-breeds, one with the Jesse's Boots, one with the Potion of Caterpillar, 2 lesser Obsidian Golem hordes, one with Blade of Slashing, one with Healing Brew, an Ironcaster with Shroud of the Saint and Surge 8 instead of Fireball, Baraki Barca as he comes, Basuzu the Vile as he comes, and then 2 hordes of Siege Breakers and an Army Standard Bearer. Who let Grant into this list? It's 24 unit strength, 13 units, and does exactly as it says on the tin. I'd say I'm not the biggest fan of the Slave Orcs in combination with the Golems. I think there's just a lot of kind of bodies that are just there that aren't really doing too much. I think you can grind sufficiently enough with the Golems and the Siege Breakers that I'd look for another kind of hammer here, or maybe some more chaff. Dragonfire teams would be really nice here to throw in some shooting. And then half-breeds, you always have to watch out for them because, yeah, they're good if they get into a combat uninterrupted, but they're so fragile that you've just got to be very particular in how you use them. On the other side, you've got the Bloodworms with the Hammer of Measured Force, which are just salivating, looking down a horde of Obsidian Golems if they ever get that matchup. So, Nathan is the one thing the South is good at is Jeff O'Neill like shooting lists where there's lots of them, or defense 6 in order to counter Jeff O'Neill. So he's familiar with this kind of matchup, and I think while it may seem nice to not have any shooting because it won't be wasted on stealthy, you would still like some to try to deal with just the massive bodies that he has, because I don't think other than the half-breeds that Thomas really has high-quality attacks. Well, I guess the Siege Breakers kind of do that in a pinch, but yeah, it'll be interesting trying to chew through all the nerve that Nathan has.
Like to point out a unique aspect of Bloodworms, which I'm almost certain is the only unit in the game that is unit strength 5 on its own.
Orc Legions.
Yeah, Orc Legions are.
Is there an Orc Legion?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. It's the only unit in the game with 40 attacks now, though.
Gotcha. Okay. Still, though.
Damn it.
First one we've seen here in this entire tournament so far. That unit is chonk.
So Devlin, to kind of maybe address the Slave Orcs seeming out of place, I've seen to quite effectiveness putting a kind of like a chaff horde on your flank and just basically taking up that space and forcing your opponent to heavily commit to kill a high nerve unit. They have to commit more points than what you put over there, so effectively they're doing their job by taking things away from your center or where you're ideally wanting to win the battle. So I think the Slave Orcs aren't necessarily going right in the mix of the rest of the army. Their job's probably babysitting tokens, carrying loot tokens, things like that. and then just sitting on a side of the board, controlling a board edge. But this list at its core looks pretty similar to Jeff Shulkin's, especially since they got the Ogre allies with the double hordes of Siege Breakers, Army Standard Bearer, 2 hordes of Lesser Obsidian Golems. There's a lot of defense 6 here. And while the Bloodworms are salivating, there is a decent amount of crushing. There's a decent amount. The Butchers, lots of attacks from the Reapers with Crush 1, backed up by Bane Chant. And that Aura Vicious is huge. The Bloodworms actually are going to benefit heavily from the Aura Vicious as well. So it's I think Nathan definitely has the tools to take out a defense 6 heavy lineup, but the defense 6 units also are hitting back extremely hard against these defense 4 average units. So it's going to be a bloodbath in the middle.
Yeah, I genuinely don't know who has a straight up advantage here. I want to say that there is some heal behind the defense 6 too, so if he can negate the Bloodworms with something, then probably the half-breeds at that point, or gargoyles. Even the half-breeds don't want to engage it. The problem with that unit is that it's so consistent. As long as it's not charging through terrain, you're looking at 10 wounds on average, just straight up. It's a nice, easy math. And then with a Vicious Aura, that only gets a little bit better. And 10 wounds against most of these units is lethal. The only units that get around that are going to be the defense 6 stuff, but you throw 1 extra unit in there, or over 2 rounds of grinding, and these Bloodworms will pick them up. I think it'll be really close. I'm going to defer to Pat first, so I can make up my mind here.
I'm going with Night Stalkers. I think he has the tools to do it. It looks like a pretty well-crafted list. I love the Shadow Hounds with the Improved Sharpness. It's a unit that's probably maybe not point-for-point fast, do a lot of work. The Phantoms are a great chaff. I think that they're actually one of my favorite chaff in the game. And the Bloodworm Legion, I think it's like you said, it's just so solid. 27 nerve. It's also just a lot to kill. Like you're probably going to have to put in close to 500-600 points to kill that thing.
Backed up by Light Leech and Heal.
Yeah. I think even a single unit of Soul Reapers, I don't think would get grinded out by it unless it got lucky. Yes, I think the Night Stalkers have it.
Adam, what you thinking? Or
Yeah, I think that normally when it's a pretty close matchup as far as who's going to win in the combat, I'm going to defer to the army that I think is going to be better at the majority of the scenarios, which in this case I think is Nathan's. He has a little bit more speed, a little bit more chaff, I think that's going to eventually win out in the end. I'm going to give it to Nathan.
Yeah, I too am going with Nathan. I think the thing that swings me is to go to that same line of thought that Adam was talking about. Scoring units. Only one of Nathan's doesn't score, where 3 expensive kind of pieces of Thomas's don't score. I think you can rely on Phantoms getting to late game more than you can Gargoyles. And just how immobile the golems are, you're going to set up kind of in a centralized area, and you're going to need units to support them, so you're not going to get around to the different objectives on the map. So it'll allow Nathan to kind of commit what he needs to tie up that kind of center, and then he can use the rest of his units to go fish for objectives if that's the kind of game it comes down to. So I think Nate has got this for me.
Yeah, I've seen Nathan play, so I know he's an exceptionally good player. I don't know about Thomas as well. That doesn't mean he's not a good player, just I haven't seen him play off the top of my head. I think Devlin probably hit it on the head for me, which is my usual bias against expensive characters is going to show its face here. There are 500 points in characters here. That is so much. And these two especially effectively trying to do the same thing with supporting through combat. It just seems like a lot of investment in support pieces. So I'll probably give it the edge to Nathan. I think it will be close, though. I think this is another one. I'm putting this on my list for streaming because this one is one that will be interesting to watch, I think. Right. And over here, we're moving on to table 28. We've got Doug Blake versus Cara Brown. Pat, if you want to take Doug here, and I'll get Kara's up on the screen. Adam, there we go.
Doug is playing Rhodia. He's got 2 regiments of halflings, 2 hordes of spears with pikes and Indomitable Will, and first one has Aegis, the second one has Brute Strength. He's got a troop of mounted scouts, a horde of honor guard with sharpness and Indomitable Will, 3 volley guns, 2 Duke and Ancient Wing arrowlets, 1 with Brutal, 1 with Staying Stone. 3 wizards, I'm guessing they're all on Pegasus. Yes, all on Pegasus, 1 with Boomstick, 1 with Inspiring and Bane Chant, 1 with Conjurer Staff and Bane Chant, and then the Battle Shrine. So 22 unit strength, 15 units, and I think every 12 scoring drops on that. So even though the unit strength isn't high for Rhodia, there's still a lot of scoring drops.
And Kara's playing Ogres. She starts off with a Red Goblin Rabble Regiment, 2 Warrior Hordes, 2 Siegebreaker Hordes, 1 with Healing Brew, the other with Staying Stone, Red Goblin Blaster, a Giant, an Ogre Warlock with Blade of Slashing, I'm sorry, not Warlock, Ogre Warlord with Blade of Slashing, and mounted on a chariot. Grakagamok and Namagrok, and she has allied in her Trident realms as well for 2 hordes of Gigas and a Naiad Envoy, because you haven't gotten enough big shields with your Siege Breakers. I think that's kind of funny. People have been allying in Ogres to get Siege Breakers, and the Ogre player allies in Trident realms to get Gigas.
Nimble Siege Breakers.
Nimble Siege Breakers. That's right.
I have a feeling that's partially a model thing. I know she has a Trident Realms army.
Yeah, I know that. She does too, so. But it works.
In their Trident Realms, like actually like it's ogres on like gators or something like that. It's like very, it can go both ways, I think. So
thematically appropriate.
Mm-hmm. But that's a lot of defense 6 for these halflings to go through. Like with that much defense 6 and defense in general, you might not even care about those volley guns. I mean, you care a little, but like.
Yeah, you don't have enough sustain to not care about the volley guns.
I'm just saying, if you can double march the Siege Breakers and a Giant directly into volley guns, you're going to be able to just tank that. You can't take all that. You can take 1 out, maybe.
Yeah, but as far as the volley guns price go, taking out 1 horde of Siege Breakers, job well done.
Yeah, I mean, that's true.
And then taking up however many turns for those units to go mop up the 3 war machines they got to clean up.
Mm-hmm.
So,
I think Cara kind of just ignores actually trying to kill it for the most part and focus on killing other stuff. She really doesn't have much that is very efficient at hunting down the war machines.
Yeah, she has a little bit of lightning bolt from Namagrok. That might be the best option. Or an ogre
The warlord. Yeah, the warlord getting back there and mucking it up on the chariot. But yeah, it's.
But he has to stay out of the line of fire, because if he just runs right at it, he's going to get blasted away.
Yeah.
I think the warlord, giant, and Namagrok are her key for machine hunters, really, because you want everybody else to be doing something else.
I mean, you got some counter shooting with the lightning bolt, but not enough, I think, to pick up the volley guns reliably.
It might be you get lucky and get a one-shot it, but chances are it's going to take 2 turns shooting to kill one.
Right. And that's the issue. You don't have the time to do it. And he can screen his stuff. Like, he runs up like, well, man, what do we got to, or what do we have to screen?
You essentially just layer. You have the Gigas run up, screening the siege breakers, I guess, and so that you have cover, or you just shoot the Gigas. The siege breakers are preferred targets, I think, over the Gigas in this matchup. It's going to be interesting on how Cara can deal with playing around the volley guns, and how Doug can use those volley guns to funnel Cara where he wants her to. That's definitely a little bit the X factor. And at the top of the volley guns, you do have all the wizards on top of that. But that does add a good amount of shots.
And the battle shrine.
Yeah. So, I mean, Doug can definitely pick up one of those defensive 6 units with some good rolling. If she does walk right into it. Cara does just have so many of it, though.
Yeah, I mean, outside of the volley guns, there's what, one honor guard unit that can contest a defense 6 unit, and then the Dukes can try to get around and get flanks. But otherwise, like, the spearmen aren't going to win a grind against them.
Spearmen, I mean, they might with Bane
Chant. Yeah.
Even then,
I don't. Rather, the Brew Strength one might with Bane Chant.
Yeah, the Brew Strength one has a chance, but
but I'm not in love of relying on melee 4 to try to swing you through a combat. I would have rather seen the items taken off the spear phalanx and kind of turned into another, like, combined with another unit to kind of make another hammer out there, because if your shooting fails to kind of do anything, you're just kind of there. And I don't really know. I think against a more kind of average defense 5, defense 4 army, that this Rordialist can really kind of pick things up and kind of go to town. But with the defense 6, and when you're not shooting at the defense 6, you got to worry about the giants and the other kind of high priority targets kind of bearing down at you. Not to mention, Grok Gamat can kind of deal with any of the Dukes on its own pretty handily. I don't know where. I don't think Doug has the tools in this matchup to really get through all of Cara's list. I think his best hope is that she gets locked in a scrum and he can kind of fly his wing guys out to contest objectives last second. But Cara's a good enough, smart enough player to know that that's going to come.
Yeah, I think the Dukes on Ancient Wings are going to be the X factor for Doug, because Cara doesn't have great options to deal with them either.
Right?
No, she doesn't.
I think this is gonna be another close one, because I think the upside, like, you're right, Adam. These spear regiments aren't going to do a lot, or sorry, not spear regiments, spear hordes are not going to do a lot of damage to the siege breakers and the Gigas, but respectively, you've only got 12 attacks here, and they're hitting on 4s for the Gigas. So that's like 6 hits a turn from those against this ensnare wall. Worse in terrain. I'm assuming Gigas may have Pathfinder. No, they do not. So, that's a pretty tough wall to have to, run into over and over. And it may be a case where, depending on the circumstances, the volley guns aren't getting touched. You can just sit in terrain with these and just watch stuff bounce over and over and over as you just keep lighting it up and shooting it to death.
On top of that, you do have the halfling braves to run and get in the way of stuff. By an extra turn of shooting, an extra turn of repositioning those arrows.
Which I'm not saying, like, Cara, obviously a good player, will probably not continue to butt heads with the spears over and over and over, but it's just, if you get stuck in, like, if depending on the scenario, you get stuck in a position where you can't avoid having to charge the spears, and you can't get to these guns or these wizards, and you just slowly eat wounds bit by bit by bit. I think it's going to be closer. I'll start off our voting and give it to. I'll probably still give it to Cara by an edge, but I do like this Rhodia list, I think, quite a bit. And it took me a while because I didn't like seeing only one honor guard, but after a second glance at kind of looking down it, I think you get a lot of stuff for not taking that second unit of honor guard, and that's interesting.
I guess that honor guard does have brew of sharpness, so it'll just kill most everything in one go. So that's pretty good. And the honor guard's faster than pretty much everything in Cara's army outside of a chariot lord. Yeah, I think I'm going to give it to Doug and the Rhodia list. I think that Cara's going to have some troubles trying to protect her flanks while advancing against a really scary shooting wall as well. So I'm going to give it to Doug.
I'm still going to stick with Cara. I would have liked to seen for not having honor guard a little bit more meat in the list, but there's kind of a lot of toys out there, and toys are nice when they work, but when they don't work, it kind of leaves you up a creek without a paddle. So I'm going to say that the Trident Realms are going to leave them up a creek.
I like both of these lists. I'm tempted to give it to Doug just so that it's a tie. But ultimately, I played against Cara. She's a really good player. I don't know Doug, or I can't recall Doug at least. So just based off of knowing the player and thinking that this list is a toss-up, I'm going to give it to Cara.
Alrighty, well, we got a edge on Cara on that one. I did add this one to my list of games to potentially stream, as this one also seems to be it'll be an interesting match. I don't think it's going to be super one-sided. But moving on, we're going to table 29. Marcelo R versus Michael Sigler. Not going to even try. Not going to even try. I know my limits. All right.
You just got to roll the tongue on that one, I think.
Rello. Ruku? See, I'm just going to... Nope.
No, keep trying. Keep trying,
No,
Matt.
it's going to keep getting worse and worse and worse. Okay, no. This list. Do I have... Okay, no, there we go. It is correct. All right. Well, Marcelo here is running Order of the Brother Mark. He's got two troops of men-at-arms swordsmen with veteran command. Oh, this is Order of the... Okay, gotcha. So it's the Basileia spinoff. That's why. He's got a horde also with veteran command, so they've all got some extra nerve there. I'm not sure if that's displayed in the actual easy army. I assume it is at 10-12 for the troops. That sounds right.
9-11 normally.
Gotcha. Okay. He's got 3 regiments of Order of the Abyssal Hunt, like you do. He's got Maquars on one, he's got Brew of Strength on another, and he's got Brew of Sharpness on the third. All of them have the Gauntlet, so they will just absolutely smack down characters all day. He's got Ogre Palace Guard with the Chalice of Wrath, 2 heavy Arbalists. He's got some Exemplar Hunters, two of them, one with Inspiring Talisman and a Gauntlet, one with Blade, both mounted, one with Blade of the Beast Slayer. He's got a Priest with Shroud of the Saint, a War Wizard with the Boomstick, and replacing Fireball with Lightning Bolt. And he has Forces of Nature, 2 regiments as allies, coming out to 15 units and 22 unit strength. Mr. Devlin, if you want to take Michael's list.
Yeah, so Michael Sigler out of the mountain is rocking his Kingdoms of Men. He has got a horde of polearms with Indomitable Will. 1, 2, 3, 4 regiments of spears that have been upgraded to pikes. So that's a yikes for the knights on the other side.
Yeah, I like the Brother Mark list until I saw that.
Yeah, right. He's got another horde. This time it's Foot Guard. They've got Potion of the Caterpillar and Indomitable Will, and they have 2-handers. 1, 2, 3 troops of Fanatics, a siege artillery paired with 2 cannons, 3 generals on Winged Beast, like you do, a Scroll Caddy with the Loot of Insatiable Darkness, and a wizard with Conjure Staff, Baneshant, and Lightning Bolt on foot. Yeah, well, there's a couple of heroes for the Forsaken? No, Abyssal Hunt, that's what they're called now. The Abyssal Hunt to go at, but it's also a lot of pikes sprinkled in there that are no bueno for that army to run up against.
The Gauntlet, remember, it's not against heroes, it's against individuals specifically.
Oh, it's just individuals. Okay, so never mind.
Army standards, the things that are going to die anyway, you're getting double attacks against. So, yeah, those general on Winged Beasts, they're big badasses. They don't care about a gauntlet.
Nah. They're too high up on their high horse to get slapped by the
They do still get vicious against monsters, so they will.
Oh, no.
That is still good for them to attack.
Anyways.
This is I really like this Brother Mark list, but this is a pretty hard counter through it. Those 4 regiments of Spear Phalanx can stop Marcello's 3 out of Marcello's 4 hammers just in its tracks. And the 4th one still isn't super likely to bust through in one go. It has a 30 or 40% chance to get stopped in its tracks as well.
Yeah, I'm not sure what these heavy Arbalists are doing in the Brotherhood list either.
Missing.
Yeah, that's what it looks like.
I mean, they're a cannon with less blast. 15 points less.
Are they a cannon, though? They don't have ignore cover.
Range 4 is better than ignore cover. Because it means you're in the open, you hit better.
Sure. Yeah, so you're basically saying, all right, I'm going to be hitting on 5s because there's almost always going to be some cover. And then, yeah, your blast D3 piercing 2 versus a cannon blast D3 +1 piercing 3 with shatter. I think the 15, obviously they don't have access to a cannon, but I think the 15 points is pretty clearly in favor of the cannon. He just has 1 lightning bolt to kind of back it up as well, so he has a little bit of shooting, but I don't think it's enough, and I don't think it's reliable to really take out anything from Michael's army. Because knowing what he does, those Fanatics are like the ideal target for all that, but the Fanatics aren't going to be sitting out front just waiting to get shot.
I think the Arbalest ideally will try to shoot a Winged Beast because they're tall enough that you might get a free shot on them. And they're low enough nerve that a good round could waver him, or at least make him so that next turn they'll be killed away too easily. think that's the target for him. That or counter battery to try to shoot the other cannons if you end up having line of sight to it. I do think cannons are better, and if you have to pay 2 points, you upgrade your cannon all the way, but that's not the cannons the armor class.
Yeah. Well, on the other side, for shooting wise, I don't really see these Ogre Palace Guard making it across the table. They seem to be probably priority number one, being as the Abyssal Hunts are going to be affected by the Phalanx. So, yeah,
Mansell is definitely going to have to screen his Palace Guard with the Forest Shamblers, which is easier said than done versus 3 war machines.
That's true. I forgot he had those Shamblers as well. So,
But yeah, you can still
might have
put
to shoot through that first.
Yeah, you can still put the Shambler or the Palace Guard on the front line, scout them through, and then kind of move forward without really losing much movement in the first turn. So yeah, that's probably going to be what Marcelo's going to have to do. Yeah, I'm with y'all. I love the Brother Mark list, but it's just it's kind of like Corey's list. You just run into a list you just don't want to see, and sometimes that's just how the cookie crumbles. Unfortunately, at these events.
Right.
I think it'll be interesting to see if Marcelo can effectively turn off the generals on winged beasts with like double charging with hunters in there, the characters. I think that'll be key if he can kind of try to whittle that down, at least try to make the counter engage from Michael a little bit neutered. Because really, I mean, if you go back and look, Michael's got some hordes, but other than, some attacks at Crush 1, they'll still take 2 or 3 turns to kind of get through things. Granted, if they're set up and hitting flanks, that changes the equation. But like in a straight up fight, Marcelo's got the much better kind of army to kind of deal with that. So it'll be interesting how the positioning game goes against because Marcelo's probably not going to want to throw his knights into the fray before he can kind of guarantee them 2 turns of work.
Well, and Michael has 2 Bane Chants backing up those, and he's got a lot of valuable attacks. Even if
that is a good point, yeah.
Even if a spearman unit gets into a flank, you throw a Bane Chant on it. That's pretty scary.
Yes.
So, and then obviously the Foot Guard and the Pole Arms, both with Crush 1, bump up to Crush 2. They put out a decent amount of hurt, and you got to kill them because that Indomitable Will on both of those, you just guarantee the counter charge on the turn you need it.
Yeah. Thomas Struther furiously reminding me that I did in fact play him in a UB event at some point, and profusely apologizing. But looking at both these lists and knowing a bit of how Michael plays his list, Michael's list is stealth good. It has a lot of elements that I think people kind of discard at first glance. They're like, 15 attacks on 4s, 13, 15, it's not that big of a deal. But it's the combination of the fact that they're all regiments. It's the mixed in fanatics. Like there's a lot of just different elements that all come together to do a surprising amount of damage very quickly. It makes it difficult to engage, and then the cannons just light you up. And you slowly get either it's the critical amount of shooting to force engagement without being too much to becoming oh no, I'm relying on shooting now, which I think makes it a strong list. And on the flip side, I don't think there's anything particularly wrong with the Order of the Brother Mark list outside of the already pointed out 2 heavy arbalists. They just feel like they're there. And I never. The Blast E3 just never feels like it does enough for me. For how many points you spend on, again, it's non-scoring war machines, but it just feels like there's not enough stuff here. Like these.
Yeah, I don't even think his chaff, the Men-at-Arms swordsmen, are going to be
Yeah.
that effective, because even Michael's kind of front line of chaff stuff with the spears will win out against them, and then
Yeah.
you still got to deal with the spears. So, yeah, I mean, honestly, kind of going into it, I had Michael down for 1 or 2 wins maybe in the whole tournament. He's kind of our young blood of the mountain region. But this is a good first round matchup for him. So if he's going to win one, it's got to be this one. I'm going to put it out there.
What you feeling, Pat? Or Devin? Devin?
I think I'm also going to go with Michael. I do like Marcella's list. I think Adam brought up all the points that I feel. I don't know if I think that the War Wizard brings anything to the list. He feels out of place because he's just got Lightning Bolt 7 with I would have liked to see maybe, because you can still take villain archers in this list, right? So I would have rather seen like that and the 2 arbalists kind of go into 2 troops or regiments of archers, and that way you still kind of cover the anti-chaff shooting, because you're not bringing enough to really punch through the big stuff like we've already kind of mentioned. So at least being able to kind of counter deal with chaff would be nice in this case. So but I mean, other than that, it's fun to see Brother Mark. I'd be interested how he does from games 2 through 6, but I'm going with Michael on this one as well. I think it's just a matchup that Marcelo just doesn't want to see, unfortunately.
Wrap us up, Pat.
I think I'm going with Michael. The fact that he's newer might shift it a little bit, because I do think Marcelo can definitely play his way around avoiding those, and Marcelo does. The 2 exemplar hunters are just salivating. That's a 3 general wing beast. That's like exactly what they want to see. They're decently costed, loader monsters. So I think it's going to be close, but if you take phalanx and having 4 of them means that you can't really get around them, and as long as Michael deploys well and plays patiently with his phalanx, then I think he's got it.
Moving on to table 30. Good old 3-0. We have George O'Connell versus Ken Heisler.
K2. With the most beautiful list that we've ever seen.
Skullface with a transplanted skull in the back of his list. Excellent.
It's a transplanted skull face.
That's beautiful. Well, Pat just left the desk, so I'm going to say, Adam, if you want to go ahead and read off George's filth.
Sure. Love goblins. He's got, goblins. Magua and his red ogres. All right, so maybe he's got ogres too. 2 hordes of rabble. Sorry, 3 hordes of rabble. I'm not reading the custom name when he says the same thing for each one. Mincer mob regiments, 2 of them. One with sharpness, the other with strength. 3 mob pup launchers, as you do. 3 wingets, one of them with the eye in the sky. 2 whizzes. One has Conjurer's Staff, Bane Chant, Weakness. The other one has the Boomstick. Magua and Joe's. And, oh, look, Ogres. Guess what? Another couple Siegebreaker hordes with an army standard bearer. Wrapping it up with 17 units, 23 unit strength.
Pat, do you want to read K2's list?
Yeah, so Ken's is doing orcs. He's got 4 regiments of Morax, 2 hordes of Great Axe, 3 regiments of Orklings, 2 war drums, a Crudger with the Orc Skullpole, Beat of Madness, and Gax Bloody Banner, a Crudger and Wing Slasher with Pipes of Terror, 2 Crushers on mounts, one with Blade of Slashing and 1 of Mace Crushing, and Ulfgar the Mad for 16 units and 26 units strength. So this is a green skin brawl, and this looks like it will be a very fun matchup to watch.
The defense 6 versus the Orc Hammer.
It'll be 2 bombastic personalities at the table too.
Yeah, I guess this is a little less shooting from the goblins. It does still have your standard built into the list 3 wingets.
And those 3 mop-up launchers are really good.
Especially against the Morax. That's like half the unit you want to shoot at.
Yeah.
Yep.
And then being able to deliver mop-up to those rabble is also very much turns a make actually gives a couple points of damage.
Mincer's big shield. Yeah. So defense 6 there. But slow. But the orcs aren't exactly rocking speed either.
I mean, you got the wild charge, so they're not super. They'll get the charge off at least.
This is the few units that do have speed more than 5, though, for the most part. You got 1 dragon.
Ken does have, the 2 crushers are going to come in pretty clutch to hunt down those wingets and or mop-ups. Probably the wingets is what you should focus on first. Because the wingets are going to be good chaff, or they can be good chaff in a pinch if they need to.
Yeah, so you can stop a winget from shooting for a turn, but how many turns of combat does it take a single crusher to kill a single winget?
Way too many.
Yeah, like 5
the world
turns.
may never know.
5 turns. I mean, 3 attacks, even with like a blade of slashing or mesa crushing, hitting on 3s, wounding on 2s. Like, say you do 3 wounds a turn. In 3 turns, they have 9 wounds. It's still a 6 that you need to break them.
It's really to stop and then stop them from getting someplace ignoring really, and or cleaning up a unit, and then next turn either following up and killing the winged with a bigger unit, or having the crusher go off and support one of the bigger units to kill something else.
Yeah, the winged can always just skedaddle out of there anyway. Just turn 90 degrees, run 10 inches to the side.
Yep.
The winged can get out. It's more about keeping the winged from blocking up those great axe, because those great axe can definitely take care of all the defense things. But they have to get there.
I do want to say, as a call out to yesterday, K2 does not have enough units to get the maximum plus 11 on the Mad Magic.
What the hell is he doing? He needs Banechant 14 to survive.
You can only get up to plus 6.
Yeah, it's a shame.
Banechant 9 is not good enough.
I think at the end of the day, once the lines kind of meet, it'll definitely, I think, it'll favor K2, but he's got to make it there. He can't lose 2 more acts along the way, which is likely when you're looking at your 3 shots apiece, so 9 elite mop-up shots a turn on 4s. Ugh. Yeah, K2's going to have his work cut out for him, and even then, he can try to block up a Mincer mob into, or just to clean up. Because, they can either tank with their big shield in the front, or they can kind of run over what's left. Because, those things with, 20-something attacks, they're not shy. They'll punch something in the mouth. So, I think if he can get in and get the grind on, K2 will kind of come out ahead eventually, but how many pieces can make it to the party, I think, is the question. And then when you get there, you still got 4 big shield units to deal with.
who can fight
Ugh.
in their own right.
Yeah, and George has 13 lightning bolts in here too, so he has a decent amount of range threat to add on to the mop-ups. It's not out of the realm of possibility to, in one turn, to be able to, on a lucky roll, kill a Morax unit. Especially, I mean, he has 2 war drums though, right? Yeah, so he should be rallying all of his line with 2 war drums. But yeah, it's going to force the orcs to him, which the orcs are going to come to him anyway. I don't know. I think Ken has the tools to help prevent the Wingets shenanigans to just add on that extra huge amount of damage that they can put out in their shooting phase as well. So George has got to win it in combat, and he might be able to pick off 1 or 2 units with shooting before that happens. But George really only has 4 units that are going to be in combat.
Yep. I genuinely don't know.
This would be a good one to watch.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be close, but I think we give the edge to George. He has enough
The shooting. Yeah.
to that these Morax, that all these defense 4 units aren't going to like these defense 4 speed 5 units. And then but he also has enough punch in the mincer mobs and the siege breakers that he's not relying just on shooting to do his damage. Like those 4 units, they can pack a punch.
It's true. But Ken wishes he had about 2 or 3 more mounted heroes for this matchup.
Right.
I mean, you want a war machine hunt, you want an individual hunt, you want to knock down the Wingets. Like, only 2 crushers isn't going to do all of that.
What you thinking, Devlin?
I think it's probably too big of a hill for K2 to climb, and I think George is going to end up taking it just on a battle of attrition in the long run.
Seems fair. Adam, you went with George. Pat?
Yeah, with George.
You went George. Yeah. Yeah. I definitely like this orc list. It's cool. It's something that I think would be enjoyable to play against. But I think the shooting gives George the edge. That's for sure. So he gets a nod from me on this one. All right. Moving on to the next match. Table 31, we've got Kyle Poole versus Joey Greek. Get Kyle's up here. And then Joey's. I will go ahead and take the Dino Lord himself. Devlin, or wait, hold on. Who did not read last time?
It was me and you. So yeah, we're back to us.
Gotcha. Okay. Then I will take Dino Lord. You can take Joey. Excellent.
All right.
All right. For Mr. Kyle, we've got 3 hordes of rabble, 3 mob east troops, a mincer mob troop, and 2 regiments. The 2 regiments have Brew of Sharpness and Brew of Strength, respectively. 3 war trombones, 2 mincers, a winget, a bangit with the inspiring talisman, 2 kings on chariots, 1 with Jesse Boots of Striding, 1 with Blade of Slashing, a whiz with the Conjure Staff and Bane Chant 2, and Mogwans, coming out to 20 unit strength, or 25 unit strength and 20 units. Pretty sporty list. I think that may be the highest I've seen. No.
Yep.
Close though.
No, the third highest.
Third most. Travis is the most. Jeff
O'Neill's
O'Neill is second. It's all three of them are goblins, though.
Yeah, they're the only
What's a
three that
twist?
broke 20.
Yeah.
All right. Joey is taking his Night Stalkers with Wilt Father retinue. So he starts it out with 2 hordes of butchers, 2 mind screeches, a planar apparition, 2 hordes of friends, 1 with the blessing of the gods, a regiment of soul flayers, the portal of despair, a horror without the aura, but he's got conjure staff, bane chant 2, weakness 2, and Shakira. I can't pronounce that, so Shakira, the Wailing Shadow, and then allies in a regiment of Centaur Brace Riders and a Tree Herder of the Wilt Father Persuasion. He clocks in at 22 unit strength, but he is only at 13 units. So I'm going to address the elephant in the room and say that Joey's going to get outdropped by a lot.
He'll see where the rabble goes.
Yep.
Only 11 of those are scoring units, too. But I think that's going to end up being comparable here, because what is a whiz, bang it?
There's
Oh,
only
maybe
2
not.
non-scoring. Yeah, I think
5.
Kyle actually has the highest number of scoring units.
At 15, it looks like. Certainly for goblins.
Yeah, 3 war trombones. Okay. Nah, so somebody might have beat him for a number of units, but he's up there.
Man. Well, we finally get to see the Wilt Daddy, the thing that everyone could potentially take, but no one is.
Did you just call Joey a no one?
I may have that may have been some shade.
And if any matchup is where you want Cloak of Death, it's against goblins.
That is true.
They have plenty of units to deal out wounds to.
In tight confines, no less. For the record, Joey, super nice guy. Met him at 2019 Masters. Very cool army as well. I suspect these will be the same fiends that were the spider models.
Yeah, this is going to be a pretty cool, pretty table.
Yep.
It's going to be a bunch of cool models and conversions.
Yeah. Yeah, it's going to be a cool table of a bunch of models that are very custom.
I think it'll be going to win.
I think you give the edge to Kyle because I just really like Kyle's list. It does a little bit of everything. It's got enough shooting that to clean up stuff, and it's more cleanup shooting than kill you turn 1 shooting. It's got a lot of unit chaff and unit strength, some good punchers as well. It's definitely on the grindier side. The Mixers can one-shot a number of units, but they're not guaranteed to. They're more of a 2-shot unit. I'm not a huge fan of the Wilt Father outside of Forces of Nature, personally. Yes, he's big and powerful, but I think you lose a lot of his synergy by taking him as an ally. Cloak of Death mixed with all this dread, though, is going to be nice.
Yeah, that's what I was just seeing.
I think that's where, if you're going to take him as an ally, I think Night Stalkers or another army that has waiver modifiers is the army to take him in.
Yeah.
Looking at Joey's list a little bit more in depth here versus Kyle's, my issue with Kyle's that I'm starting to see is that you've got the Menser mobs, which admittedly are defense 6 and do hit like a freight train to the front. And you've got the Mensers, which are less of a freight train, but they're super cheap theoretically. And then you have Goblin Kings, and I will tell you from experience, having actually run Goblin Kings on chariots, that they are not super great in combat. They're there and they can do nimbly things and flanky things, but they're actually more of kind of a speedy versatile unit because of your 7 shooting attacks.
They're more harassers than
right. If you get a juicy flank, then you take it because it's still Crush 1, Thunder 1. But most of the time, you're gonna just look to shoot stuff and run around and inspire. Which means that these Night Stalkers are going to hit these Mincers, and the defense would normally be a counter, but you're looking at 14 for a break before you even start rolling dice. Less on the other units for the most part. The Maw Beast will be in there to chap off, but he does have Lightning Bolts, Wind Blast, Mind Fog. Wind Blast is actually pretty nice here against these Mincers. My biggest issue has always been that they're slow.
If you get Wind Blast, a single Mincer bomb into some terrain, that Mincer can just sit out the game for a while until Joey decides he needs the Mind Screeches anyway. The Mind Screeches are going to do a lot of work in this game. I would focus on the Mobbies first, actually, because those Mobbies, they do a good amount of damage, a surprising amount of damage for how cheap they are. I mean, melee 3, crush 1, vicious is pretty good for even that just 6 attacks.
Not saying he can't do it. I'm just there are things here that I like about Joey's in this matchup.
Yeah.
Yeah, and Kyle has a kind of, I think, the different take on goblins. He has more shooting than George, but more combat than the others that we've seen as well. But he's kind of in that middle road, and he's used this list or something very similar to it very effectively for a long time. And I think it's one of those that's just deceptive on paper. You look at it, you don't really see a whole lot outside of what, just kind of sticks out, but it works well together, and it pulls out wins in the end. They might not be pretty, they might not be landsliding, but he gets the job done in the end. And I know Joey's a long time Night Stalker player, one of the better ones from records, and he has the list that would be able to handle this army on paper reliably well as also. So I think that for me, it comes down to then, who's going to be better at the scenarios, and I think it's pretty easily a toss-up, honestly.
It really is. Both these guys know their armies so well. I mean, Cal's been playing Goblins and Joe's been playing Night Stalkers for as long as Kings of War's been a thing in the Master scene. I think it's going to be a really good game. I think I'd give the edge Kyle, mainly because there's just a lot of units to chew through, especially since very few, yes, the War Trombones don't score, but you still have to kill them one at a time.
And he has 15 scoring units, which is still more drops than what Joey has altogether.
Mm-hmm.
I think it'll be interesting to see how Joey can play with the Brave Striders. I think they're a really good flanking force, and there's something that can help kind of swing a charge over to Joey's side. But at the same time, you've got to make sure you pick up things. I mean, because even if you do, you're going to run into a 3 War Trombones staring at you, and the 2 Kings and the Wiz at the end of the day. So those fiends might get into something and pick up one of the rabble hordes kind of real quickly, but then you're like, oh, what do I do now? So Joey's really got to kind of taper his approach, because he can't just kind of go all in there, because Kyle wants to grind with those big shield units, and then he wants to kind of sit back and shoot you as well with the things that aren't making combat. So it'll definitely be interesting.
Man, it is a very close game in my opinion. I think I give it to Joey just on the slimmest edge, and it really comes down for me. It's the double stacked modifiers basically. Like the fact that you start off a combat at -2. I don't think people fully understand just how ridiculous that is when you factor in that most units hit on 4s and wound on 4s in this game against defense 5, for example. Like that's like adding 8 dice to a unit in combat effectively before you're not rolling them. You don't have any chance of not hitting those. You just get it, and it's for multiple combats. So it's an insane modifier when you start stacking those. I don't think that's like a complete landslide thing for him by any means, because as you said, there's a lot to chew through in this list, and Kyle's got a lot of shooting and there's some flexibility here, but I give it the smallest edge just because I built my entire 2020 Masters run on that theory, and I can say from experience that it works.
I'm going to go with Kyle by a slim margin.
Cool. Tied up on that one, I think. Am
Yeah.
I correct?
I'm going with Kyle. So
3 for Kyle.
3 for Kyle. Okay, never mind. Then so we got a 3-1. So not a landslide, but I'll mark that one up as well. I think this one would be fun to watch.
it will be close. I pray that Joey's dice don't fail him in his most poignant time of need, because that tends to happen.
Ain't that how we always want it? All right.
Just average dice. I'll take average dice.
Yep. Can win with averages. All right. Our final table. We've got Alex Chavez versus Ryan.
You can say it. You can do it.
No, I can't. I need another couple bits of alcohol in me for that. Alrighty. Let's get our last table up here. Pat, if you want to take Alex, and
the only guy to beat me in the Masters.
When's the last time you played at Masters?
We're not going to answer that one.
Okay. Give some opportunity.
Chicago.
Hey, I have said I am the premier Kings of War has-been. All right. Alex is bringing his forces of Abyss. He's in lower Abyssals, exchanging for crushing strength at defense 3. So he has 2 regiments of Succubi, brew strength, fire oil. He's got a troop of gargoyles, 2 regiments of flame bearers, horde of Bolocks with Sir Jesse's boots, a regiment of tortured souls, 2 abyssal fiends, 2 abyssal warlocks, 1 with Bane Chair. He has an Efreet with boots of levitation and manifestation of Baal for 14 drops and 25 unit strength.
And
Nifty.
Ryan, 50. What?
Nifty.
Oh, nifty. I thought you said 50. I'm like, that's a lot. Is that unit strength? So Ryan's got some orcs. We got Moraxes has a troop and 2 regiments. Long Axe Horde with Brew of Sharpness. He has 2 Axe Regiments. A Gore Rider Regiment with Meat of Madness. A War Drum. A Giant. A Crudger with the Bloody Banner. Crudger on Wing Slasher. A Troll Bruiser with Pipes of Terror. Morax Mansplitter, who gives Aura Thunderous Charge to Berserkers. That's pretty cool. And then Ulfgar the Mad. How many Bane Chance does he get?
Not 14.
God damn it. Need to max this out.
Infantry or just orc?
His list doesn't have the details, so I can't tell you. I'd have to go.
Yeah.
I have to go do research.
It's 7 if it counts the Gore Riders. If not, it's only 6. So only plus 6 or 7, give or take.
Not good enough.
Not good enough.
I think this is pretty interesting. I think the orc list is pretty straightforward. You got your anvils or hammerbills with the long axes. You got some hammers with the more axes. Gore riders are kind of right there too. And then a lot of utility one-offs of different things. But Alex's list is, I think, pretty deceptive.
A lot of shots.
Yeah, at first I looked at him like, what does this army do? And then you add up the number of shots, and they're effective shooting. And it will destroy defense 4, which there's quite a bit of on the other side with those more axes. Yeah, the rest of it's defense 5, but that amount of shooting against orcs, they usually don't like that.
There's a lot of orcs, low unit or nerve orcs. The orcs only have one horde, so that's going to be particularly susceptible to shooting.
Yeah, I mean, you do benefit from the war drum, which is nice. I do like the theory of the more units you get, the more effective the war drum actually is. But and that long axe horde is really strong. Unfortunately, there's nothing that's going to be affected by the phalanx outside of Manifestation of Baal.
You disparaging the gargoyles and their 8 attacks, 10 attacks?
They're going to do what they're going to do, whether they hit on 5s or 4s. So,
touche.
They haven't hit attacks yet.
Ryan's going to have to be careful with that drum, though, because a lot of those shots are in higher height units. So, and that way, the drum's going to have to hide behind either these riders or the giant or something. Because if he loses that really takes him down in nerve.
And there's a lightning bolt 7 from Baal.
Right, exactly. I was going to say the issue here with, as you said, the more things that the drum buffs, the better the drum is, right? But it's also the double-edged sword of, if you get rid of the drum, suddenly a whole lot of things are hurting at the same time.
Yep.
Well, I think it's a crossing like graft where it's like, okay, little things, but then you have shots on the other side, and there's an apex where it just gets gross.
Absolutely. And Alex is obviously a former master, so if he's playing this list, it's got to be something he's comfortable with and feels like he'll do well with too. So.
Yeah, it's a shocking amount of shots.
Yeah.
And behind that, you've got some Molochs, Succubi, Abyssal Fiends.
So, a question in chat is, what do you guys think of the levitating Ifrit?
It's against this list. I don't think it's going to have too many issues because you don't have. I think you've got the Crudger would normally be what I'd want to send after it, but that's not going to catch it if Alex doesn't want him to. Heck, even with Wild Charge, it's not going to catch it. And I don't see anything here. Like, none of his individuals back here have the speed to go chasing him, except for a dragon, which doesn't want to do that. So against this list, it's fantastic. Against other lists that have, the give or take chasey characters. Here's the thing with combat characters. It's really easy to butt up or run through your own stuff over and over and over with shooty characters, to the point where the combat characters will just never get the charge. But the shooting characters will still get shots on something. So I like it quite a bit. I would prefer taking a Ifrit over almost every combat character in this game. With or without boots of levitation, even.
I like it as well. I think it's a bit of an old school pick, but it's still really good. It has a really large start range, and Alex has enough other shooting to go with it. It's not a great pick by itself, but I think it's a good pick in addition with all the other shooting.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, the problem is even if Ryan can weather the shots, he gets to the lines and he still has to deal with 2 succubi regiments, a horde of Molochs, and then Abyssal Fiends still aren't a slouch, even if you try to shut them off from shooting. I mean, it's still, 7 attacks, crush 2 on 3s and vicious. It's just it looks like an uphill battle for Ryan. There's a few tricks he can kind of pull out, but I think at the end of the day, the shooting plus the combat proficiency that these Abyssals have is just gross. And you can't even really discount the lower Abyssals, because after you've put a round or 2 of shooting on something, they're crush 1 because you did the upgrade, and they've got fury. So unless you pop them on a -22, you're not. They're going to hurt back and probably have enough juice to finish the job. So.
Yeah, I was looking, and I think these Abyssals are going to make their points back and then some, because more axes are naturally going to be your target of choice with the shooting, which are the ideal unit to take out a high nerve unit. So that leaves the long axes to take out a horde of lower Abyssals. Otherwise, even a triple charge, I don't think you overcome the 22 nerve on averages with 2 axe regiments and a gore rider, say. You're going to have to commit a lot to that 200-point unit.
Yep.
I think that this is going to be a good matchup for Alex. He has enough defense 4 on the other side of the board to be able to pick up with a lot of value in it, a lot of points invested in those more axes. And then he has enough sustain, grind, and just enough units to be able to threaten and pick up most everything else that Ryan has coming his way. Not to mention, Alex has the speed in most situations outside of the Crudger Dragon. So I'm going to give this one to Alex.
I'm going to continue. I know I've kind of said my piece, but yeah, I think Alex just has the tools to kind of chew up and deal with this this list. So yeah, I think Alex will be, 1 of 5 steps away from reclaiming his throne.
Isn't it 1 of 6 steps?
Math was never my strong suit. That's why I'm bad at this game.
If you only play 5 games, Devlin, you're never going to be masters.
Well, I only remember 5. There may be a 6th one in there, but ask John Green how that worked for me last year.
Yeah, looking at this, I think Alex has the edge for certain. It's another one of those lists when it comes to Ryan here, where I think he has a plan. I just can't quite see the full plan outside of just having a strong, meaty front line, which seems to be the vast majority of what he's got on the table, which is cool. That's always good. No one could ever say that I would not just take a solid, hey, here's a strong just chunk of nerve that just hits on average, doesn't have to do anything special.
Isn't that your entire Empire Dust Army?
Yeah, no, exactly. I'm with him on that. It's just typically I see other support elements behind it. That's what I'm missing here. And it's always one of those I'd like to see it. I like to see how it goes, and then we'll, then I can be like, oh, that was the plan. That makes sense. But Alex, the plan is there. and it's a good plan. It's a solid plan. And even if it doesn't work in this matchup, I think it has a good shot in a lot of the other matchups we've seen so far. So I give an edge to Alex here.
Pat, what do you think?
Listen? Yeah, Pat.
I think Alex. I think he's got the. I like his list. He's won matches before, and he's done well in other ones he's played.
Alrighty. Well, I think that unless I missed one of those, I think that's a sweep for Alex on this one. Best of luck, Ryan. Prove us wrong, as everyone should. But that wraps up all of our matches. So now we're going to go to just chatting about, let's see, which one of these is it? There we go. Just going to go and chat about who we think is going to do well, who we think is going to have the prettiest army, who we think is going to be the drunkest table, any fun list that you guys saw, anything that stood out to y'all. Let's start with what lists stood out. What lists do you think are not necessarily your dark horse pick, but like just a cool list?
Let me ask this question to kind of get us started. What list do we think can deal with the goblin filth? Because that's kind of the underlying statement. It's like, to win this thing, you're going to have to beat Jeff or Travis, one of those two guys. So what kind of list do we have, do we think can rise to those mid to upper tables that can deal with that? Because I think that's really going to be the question on who can get up there. Sure, there's a couple of players who can do it, and I think a lot of it will come down to scenario, but is there any list that really starts off those matchups on a good foot? I think is the first thing to take a look at.
Short answer, no. There's not.
I mean, I think a list with equal amount of drops that can weather the shots, like Eric Trovig's worst list. I mean, yes, he did the lazy thing and literally just submitted last year's list. But I think that has enough beef and enough individuals and units to go hunt down all the goblin individuals that he has a shot there. And then Brad McKay and Dustin's Northern Alliance Eisenmetals fan have a decent shot. Of those, I like Dustin's version a little bit better, mainly because of the triple giants. I think the triple giants are better than the frostbang core, specifically against the goblins, because they have the icy breath and they have the speed and higher nerve. And then John Green, his is a skew list. If he runs up against one of those defense 6 walls, he's not going to like it. But if he gets goblins, I think that's actually a good counter, because he's got a bunch of stealthy and a bunch of individuals to go hunting down all those goblins.
I agree. I'd agree with John Green's list. I think it does have probably one of the better opportunities. I think the flying individuals are a big factor, but I think the biggest factor is actually the height 2 across the board and stealthy with all of his succubi. It forces the goblin player to either expose his shooting, which they don't want to do, putting it up front. Or you have to wait until your rabble screen dies before you actually can contribute shooting wise. So I think of those, I agree John has probably the best opportunity. I don't think the same could be said for the orc hordes with Eric's lists. I think that the lack of stealthy actually, and the individuals not flying to get over the lines to the valuable units, I think that the orcs just get mowed down in waves as they come running forward. Outside of that, I think the only other type of list that has a chance, albeit proven to not be a great opportunity, is a defense 6 heavy army. So something like Jeff Shulkin's list comes to mind. You have a lot of defense 6, you have to get through it, and usually it requires the entire or most of the goblin shooting to take out a unit with defense 6. But usually those armies have such low number of drops that it doesn't end well in the very end when it comes to scoring units and scenarios at that point. So I think the best counter to the Goblin army, though, is playing the other Goblin army. So Jeff and Travis will just have to meet and duke it out.
I'm all for that. Cox, make it happen.
I'm gonna throw in Stephen Hausnick's list, which is effectively just another Goblin shooting list, but I think it has edges against other Goblin shooting lists, with the longer ranges and a little bit more oomph in other places. I think John Green might run into issues of the exact description I just did with the flying characters may be able to fly over stuff, but they got to be able to get to the characters. And if the characters just keep on repositioning, they're still only height 2, and the flying characters the same 2. Especially against Travis's list, that's a lot of rabble you can duck and dive behind. But his succubi definitely will eat those hordes pretty quickly. Fingers crossed, if that does happen.
Right. Anyway, so yeah, try not to run up against the goblins, guys. It's the new game of Masters. Dodge the goblins. I've already lost.
Well, with that, are there any particular dark horses? And by dark horse, I'm going to define this because Tom's dark horse picks of Dustin, Adam, and who was the other? Was it Travis?
I think it was Travis Tim and Jeff Shulkin, who both of them finished second and third last year's Masters, respectively, were chosen as dark horses in that podcast.
So a dark horse is someone who doesn't have a fantastic, over-the-top, easy-to-track tournament record, but has something nifty and new or came out of nowhere and therefore might win it this year. That's what I would define as a dark horse. For me, I'm going to have to dig up the one that I saw. I think off top of hand, and I think he will run into issues if he does hit a Goblin player, which he will probably inevitably will, but I give a really good shot to Lex.
That's my dark horse as well.
You can't take my dark horse, Matt.
Three people all going Lex Simon. Jesus.
I got a backup, so fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going Lex. He's a great player. I think the only thing that keeps him down is lack of practice, essentially, because he's a teacher. But I think everybody has less practice than they normally do, so he might be a more equal footed. And I really do like his list. But like you said, Matt, I do think he might have trouble against some of these goblins, so will need somebody else to take care of that. But in a 64-person tournament, you could get to top table, going 5-0, without facing that goblin list.
Yeah.
Yep. That's the goal. Hope somebody else drags them down just enough. So since you took my first pick, I'll go to my second pick, which is somebody from the mountain region. So I'm going to actually throw Billy Henninger out there as a dark horse. He has a really nasty Varangur army. He has a lot of stealthy and terrain mitigating units. So he kind of has what you want to see in some of these matchups, and at least give yourself a chance against those skew lists and those goblin lists. I don't think he wants to go up against the goblins, but if he does, he has a better shot than a lot of other armies. So I'm going to throw one out for Billy.
Solid pick.
He does have a really good list for that.
I've got a homer pick and a non-homer pick. I'll start with the non-homer pick. I really like Greg Pearson's list. I think just the weird mishmash. You don't see a lot of ogres that throw in enough goblins to kind of give it chunk and chaff. So I'd like to see how far Greg can kind of take that list. Obviously, he probably near the end of the day doesn't want to see the Goblin list either because all of his heavy hitters can be picked out by that shooting. But I think he's got the tools to deal with most general use armies out there. And so it'll be interesting to see how he goes. And then for the homer pick, I'm going to go with my boy, my brawler brother over in Arkansas. Dylan Murray has been kind of tearing it up in the South and the mountain over there the last 2-3 years. It's good to see him finally make it to a Masters, cutting through that stacked South team and forcing them to go play in the Pacific Northwest or wherever they were banished to. So he's been using Salamanders since they were garbage. He's finally been able to kind of come back to them in 3rd edition. And so I think his kind of mix of defense 6 with kind of the punch behind it. And I think he can probably go pretty far with that list. So I'm giving my boy a shout out.
Yeah, I'll tag in on that and say that Dylan has improved immensely as a player over the last 2 years, and I think it shows. That's why he is doing so well this year.
Yeah, I think he might be one of those sneaky picks for Paragon too, because he paints beautifully as well, and he's got the battle scores to kind of keep him up there, and he's a fun guy to be around. You have to remember, 1st and 2nd place Paragon was Tim Smith and Dan Kamek, and neither of them qualified this year. So it's time for someone else to come up and take the mantle. So I'm rooting for him.
So on. Moving down the line, who do we think will be? I almost don't want to do prettiest table because I feel like there's going to be a unanimous vote almost instantaneously. I don't know of any armies outside of our region, unfortunately, or mountain region even, that have anything to compare to the resident 4 painting champion trophies in a row, Hank Gouge. Is anyone? I know Kyle's army is very nifty. I know Ryan's army will be super pretty. I don't think we do not have.
Who do we think is going to miss Sunday morning's game? How about that?
Ooh,
Devlin.
No, I mean, I've probably got the shot for being the most drunk, but I can usually be drug out of bed. At worst case, I'll be there in a blonde wig and a slightly more fitter body named Dan Kamek.
Yeah, at least miss the start time. Maybe show up, but we'll be late.
Yeah, because we don't have Rashad.
Rashad's not there, so that's the obvious choice.
True hangover hero right there.
Ooh, maybe we can tank someone like Tyler Schultz and just because I don't want to be the one who misses. It's got to be someone else.
You got to think of it this way: they got to do bad enough their first day that they want to get that drunk. Because if you're doing well, then you're probably going to show up on day 2 at least reasonably sober.
What are you trying to imply? That I'm terrible at this game and I will take that and smile. Yeah, it might be me. I think, yeah.
Billy throwing his name in the hat there.
Okay.
Looks like.
Yeah. He'll still be drunk. All right.
Yeah, I'm sure Travis will too, but Travis, I don't know that he'll not be able to wake up the next morning.
That's fair.
It's a different kind of drunk.
Yeah.
Real quick, I want to go back one topic and say that I think the Brenton Williams Lex Simon table might be up there for the prettiest. It won't beat Gouge in them, but that's probably your one step down. Because Brenton's army, although he's brought it around for, I think this will be his 3rd year with his orcs, but if you haven't seen his fight wagon with the Kings of War tables and the different kind of personas of the various big wigs in Kings of War, it's really a sight to behold. And I've seen some of the progress picks for those giants. And those are hefty giants that he's building up. So that'll be another beautiful table. And like we said, if Flex is bringing out his snake guys, those are some top notch figures as well.
Who do we think? Man, I'm just trying to think of some interesting questions on this one because we could do who wins it all, but I feel like there's a very good list of candidates for who could win it all this year. Many of whom have been covered by many other sources of media for Kings of War. We could do.
Let's do Countercharger. Who do we think is going to finish right in the middle? Won't be me.
You're looking at a list that can't handle everything.
Who was Countercharger last year? Was it Kapsner?
Yes, I believe so.
Okay.
I feel like John Green, if he gets the right matchups, he can win it all. But if he gets the bad matchups, he loses it all. And therefore, if he gets a mix, he could be Countercharger, being because his list is such a skew.
I'm going to hop on the skew list, and I'm going to throw Garrett Mercer in there in the mix, too, with his Giga spam. And
that's a good one, yeah.
Best region battle is being requested.
Oh, that's South.
Yeah, South.
Yeah.
I mean, it's definitely homebrewing it, but
I do think, unlike other years, there are some regions bringing some significantly stronger players. It also helps that some of the
because
South players have been South players. But
are you talking about South or Northwest South?
It also depends on if they take the best 4 players or the full team. I don't know how
full team. They're taking full team. So
full team.
That's full team instead of best 4. That's interesting.
Yeah. I think it's always been full team. I've always been a component of best top 4, but
I think the first 2 years was top 4.
Yeah.
Really?
I felt like they switched.
Yeah, because Chicago.
I think once Texas got a hold of that, they said now all 8. So San Antonio was the first year it was like all 8 then.
Yeah.
I'm going to go against the South, and I'm going to say Midwest has got your number this year.
Yeah, Midwest does have a very strong number of players as well. I think Mountain has some good players.
They do have a former South player in Mark Taylor, so I'd give you that.
I don't think if it was top 4, I think Mountain Region could put up a fight. But if we're going all 8, I don't think we have the depth.
Yeah, I think a top 4 would be a lot closer in a lot of different regions. But I think if it's all 8, then I do think it's the South.
No one wants to give the Southeast any love?
Not this year.
Nice.
We had a lot of turnover in some of our.
I'm on turnover.
The team. Look at this. Like
we got Kyle Poole in our region. We had a lot of turnover. Oh no.
We lost the first and second Paragon. So I mean they're not getting up there by paint and sports alone. So losing Tim Smith, Brian Tucker was pretty good. That's not to say that some of us are filling in aren't the best, but getting Jeff back actually is really great as well. But I think we'll probably be 3rd place unless I can pull a miracle run out my ass. So I'm starting with you, Chapman.
EOD miracle.
Alrighty. Well, guys, thank you all for tuning into the stream. Thank you all for being with us on both today and yesterday for covering all of these matchups and all these armies. If you were one of the people who we voted against, feel free to prove us wrong. Devil and I'm sure will be more than happy to buy you a drink if you come up and show us your scores and are just like, ha! Like I will absolutely buy you drinks.
It's an excuse to drink.
If you win too.
I'm all for it.
No, that's the real problem. But in any case, I think everyone's just excited to see each other.
You're not going to put your money on the table for that one person that's going to win it all. Oh, it sounded like you were wrapping it up without predicting a single winner.
We want to go through. We wrap up and do the who we actually think is going to be the master. Not even a dark horse, just who we think has it this year.
Yep.
What do you think, Adam? Who do you think has it this year?
All right. Do we want to say no duplicates? Can't pick the same person? All right. Well, I got a homer, and I got to go with my boy. Travis is taking it down this year. he has the most drops. He'll have the most wins at the end of the day.
I'm going to follow the same and hope that Jeff is right up there with him. So if nothing else, those two coming in like 1-2 or 1-3, hopefully gets a Nerf bat to look at Bangits, because those things are ugly, and Wingits, and those things are also awful. So you have halflings now. Show them love. You can Nerf goblins. It's okay, Pat. It's okay. You can Nerf goblins, please, Pat.
I'm going to do a top three because I think any one of them can do it. I agree Travis is in my top three. I think Tom Andis and Dustin Howard also have a good chance of getting it.
If you had to pick one, Pat, just
if I had to pick one, I would go Super Beast.
I think Dustin is very much a safe pick there. If I had to pick one, and it's not. I also would have put Travis on my list as a strong thing. Adam, I like you as an individual, fantastic. And I like the way you play in your list and all that, but I think you're going to struggle against those goblin lists.
Well, yes, I will.
Yeah, exactly. Man, I think Hausnick would be my pick. I think it is a filthy rat list, and it has a lot of the tools, I think, to deal with the goblins that he's going to have to fight through, but it doesn't get any worse against other lists. Like, I don't think it's going to struggle against Defense 6 particularly. I don't think it's going to struggle against spam skew lists all that much, and I don't think it worries about speed all that much. So I think he has a very good shot to take it. But good, I would give shout outs to Tom's list as well. Specifically Tom running Tom's list, not Mike running the same list.
Darn, if you would have picked either one, you would have had a twofer.
I know.
Mom Gannis.
Yeah. Alrighty. Well, with those picks, now you all get to prove us wrong, and just watch as all 5 of those players or all 4 of those players, and even the side picks all just do terribly this Masters, and it's some
I'm going
other
to call
person.
it that whoever wins doesn't face the goblins, and it's not going to be a goblin player though, because I do think the goblin players are going to do well enough in their first 3 games to take each other out.
But that means that there's one left when the dust settles.
I think the bigger risk for the goblins, if I had to guess why Travis didn't take it last year, it's probably because they can't get the big wins. They can get wins. They can always guarantee that win, but they got to get the 6 big wins.
Well, Travis also had the hardest strength of schedule of anybody. He played, I think it was 5 of his 6 players were in the top 20 at the end of Masters.
Like Dustin.
Yeah, I think that's the problem with those goblin lists, is they're going to be consistently matched up against top players.
Well, every list is going to be matched up against top players at Masters.
Or rather, people who finish in the top 20, the top third of Masters.
Sure. Alrighty. Any closing statements, y'all? Any things I'm missing?
I just love the last comment here. We're just 4 dudes who don't know shit.
Pretty much. Yeah.
I mean, I thought that was assumed when I got recruited for this. Like, he couldn't have picked anyone better. That's the same thing Keith asks every year. He kind of looks around at the Masters team. He's like, I got to invite you again? Why did you win? Oh, yeah, everyone else. Like, personal tragedies. That's availability is my only quality.
Good color commentary. So, and a better knowledge of the Southeast region than I have by far.
And the scars to prove it.
This is true. Alrighty, gents. Alrighty, stream. We will see y'all in one. Well, most of us will see y'all in 1 week. I believe Pat will be chilling in Austin, but the rest of y'all, until we see y'all have a good one. Good night and good day.
Later.